You may be more tired than your body admits. There is the tiredness that follows labor, travel, responsibility, conversation, and the long demands of the day. But there is another fatigue, more private and more difficult to explain. It is the exhaustion of trying to believe while a second voice continues asking whether belief is foolish. It is the weariness of planting hope in the morning and digging around its roots by nightfall. It is the strain of saying, perhaps life can change, while some older part of you quietly prepares for disappointment. You may have carried this conflict for so long that you no longer recognize it as conflict. It has become the background sound of thought. You desire one thing, yet imagine its opposite. You pray for peace, yet rehearse danger. You ask for support, yet prepare to be left alone. You long to be chosen, yet interpret silence as rejection before any answer has been given. You turn toward a new state, and then glance backward to make certain the old one is still following. This divided movement is what has made doubt appear powerful. Doubt has not ruled because it possesses a greater power than imagination. It has ruled because you have repeatedly permitted it to occupy the seat of judgment. You have allowed it to examine every desire, question every inward act, and pronounce a sentence upon possibilities it did not create. Tonight, I do not ask you to destroy your mind. I do not ask you to become incapable of questions. I do not ask you to force every uncertain thought into silence. When I speak of killing doubt, I speak of ending its authority. I speak of removing it from the throne it has occupied by habit. A thought may still pass through consciousness. An old question may still arise, but it need not become the judge of what you are allowed to expect, receive, or become. The king may hear many voices without surrendering the crown to each one. Awareness is that king. A doubtful thought is only a visitor in the court of consciousness. It speaks because it has spoken before. It knows the corridors. It carries old documents. It remembers former disappointments and presents them as though they were laws. But memory is not law. Habit is not prophecy. Familiarity is not truth. Tonight, you are not required to defeat every witness. You are only required to remember who sits upon the throne. You do. The awareness that says, I am, sits there. And before sleep comes, you will begin to feel the difference between hearing doubt and obeying it. You will learn why doubt has seemed so intimate, why it has spoken in your own voice, and why its return does not mean that your new state has failed. You will discover that doubt may be present without being possessed, noticed without being crowned, and heard without being believed. This is the beginning of its end. Before you drift deeper, take one small outward action that reflects this inward decision. Subscribe to this channel, not as a promise that you will never doubt again, but as a quiet declaration that doubt will no longer decide who you are. Each time you return, let these teachings remind you to come back to the state you have chosen, gently, without struggle. Now allow even that action to be complete. Nothing else is demanded of you. You may listen without effort. You may understand without holding every sentence. You may fall asleep before I have finished speaking, and nothing will be lost. The mind that has spent the day measuring, comparing, anticipating, and defending may begin to loosen its grip. It has worked long enough. It does not need to stand guard over this night. Let my voice continue without requiring your full attention. You have perhaps imagined that doubt must be conquered by producing stronger belief. You have tried to answer every fearful question with a brighter statement. You have tried to cover uncertainty with declarations, to speak confidence loudly enough that the trembling voice beneath it could no longer be heard. Yet a voice does not become false merely because another voice is louder, nor does it become true merely because it repeats itself. Doubt is not defeated by noise. It loses its throne through recognition. You recognize it as an old conclusion. You recognize that it speaks from a former identity. You recognize that it is presenting yesterday as though yesterday were the only material from which tomorrow could be made. And then you stop treating it as an oracle. Suppose doubt says, nothing will change. Listen carefully to what has happened. A thought has appeared. That is all. The future has not spoken. Life has not issued a decree. No unseen tribunal has announced the result. A sentence has moved through consciousness because it has moved through consciousness many times before. The sentence feels important because it is familiar. It feels prophetic because the body knows its tone. It feels true because you have rehearsed the emotional posture from which it comes. But familiarity can imitate certainty. A road traveled every day begins to look like the only road in the country. The feet turn toward it before the traveler has consciously chosen. The trees, stones, and bends become so well known that any other direction seems strange. Doubt is such a road. You have walked it after disappointment. You have walked it after silence. You have walked it when money seemed insufficient. You have walked it when another person did not behave as you hoped. You have walked it when the body felt tired. You have walked it when a prayer appeared unanswered. You have walked it so often that the first step seems automatic. Tonight, I am not asking you to destroy the road. Let it remain where it is. You are simply not required to walk it. A familiar direction is not a command. You may stand at the old turning and remain still. You may hear the invitation, come this way. You know this path. Here is the place where you predict loss before it arrives. Here is the place where you call yourself forgotten. Here is the place where you prepare for disappointment, so that nothing may surprise you. You may hear it, and you may remain still. The power is not in preventing the road from appearing. The power is in no longer confusing its appearance with your destination. For many years, you may have believed that doubt protected you. It promised that if you expected little, pain would be smaller. It promised that if you imagined every danger, you would be prepared. It promised that if you questioned every good possibility, you would not be deceived. It promised safety through disappointment, rehearsed in advance. But ask yourself quietly, did the rehearsal truly protect you? Or did it make you suffer before any event had occurred? Did it prepare wisdom, or did it exhaust the very mind that would later need to respond? Did it prevent loss, or did it make every period of uncertainty feel like loss already completed? Doubt often disguises itself as caution. It says, I am only being sensible. But true wisdom does not need to torment you in order to guide you. Wisdom may observe a fact. Wisdom may change a plan. Wisdom may ask a question. Wisdom may advise patience. Wisdom may say no. But wisdom does not turn every fact into a sentence against your being. Wisdom says, this matter deserves attention. Doubt says, this proves you are helpless. Wisdom says, more information is required. Doubt says, the worst must be true. Wisdom says, take the next clear step. Doubt says, you must see the entire road before moving. Wisdom is sober, but it is not cruel. Doubt wounds you and calls the wound preparation. Tonight, you are learning the difference. You do not need to abandon discernment. You do not need to become foolish, careless, or blind. You are releasing the habit of using uncertainty as evidence against yourself. Perhaps you have doubted whether your desire is possible. But beneath that question lies a deeper question. Am I the kind of person for whom this can happen? Am I permitted to receive? Am I capable of sustaining the good I desire? Will life make an exception for me? Doubt rarely remains concerned with the object alone. It turns quickly toward identity. A delayed answer becomes, I am overlooked. A closed door becomes, I am not worthy. A difficult season becomes, my life will always be difficult. One event becomes a name. One moment becomes a destiny. One appearance becomes a throne from which the whole future is judged. This is where doubt receives its authority, not from the event, from identification. The event says, something has not yet occurred. Identity says, it never will occur for me. The event says, another person is silent. Identity says, I am forgotten. The event says, money is needed. Identity says, I am abandoned by supply. The event says, I do not know the way. Identity says, there is no way. The first statement may be a present observation. The second is a coronation. Tonight, you withdraw the crown. You may say, I see the condition. I do not make it king. I hear the question. I do not make it judge. I feel uncertainty. I do not call uncertainty my identity. There is room between awareness and the thought it notices. That room is freedom. Perhaps it seems very small at first. A thought arises and the body responds immediately. The chest tightens, the stomach contracts. The mind begins constructing a future around the thought. It all appears to happen at once. Yet even there, awareness is present. You notice the tightening. You notice the prediction. You notice the old emotional road opening. The one who notices is not identical to what is noticed. This distinction may seem slight, but it is the opening through which authority returns. I notice doubt. Therefore, doubt is appearing within me. It is not the whole of me. I notice fear. Therefore, fear is a state being witnessed. It is not the witness. I notice the old conclusion. Therefore, something in me stands before the conclusion, and may refuse to sign it. This is how doubt begins to lose its throne. Not through banishment, through separation. The servant has been mistaken for the ruler. The messenger has been mistaken for the king. The report has been mistaken for the verdict. Restore each to its proper place. A doubtful thought is a report from an old state. It tells you how that state interprets the world. It says, from here, the future looks dangerous. From here, love looks uncertain. From here, supply looks distant. From here, freedom looks impossible. The thought is honest concerning the state from which it speaks. But you are not compelled to remain in that state. Move inwardly, and the view changes. This is why reasoning with doubt for hours often brings little peace. You are attempting to change the view while remaining in the same room. You stand in the chamber of abandonment and argue that love must exist. You stand in the chamber of lack and argue that supply is possible. You stand in the chamber of confinement and argue that freedom may come. The arguments may be excellent. The room remains the same. Leave the room. You do not need to convince abandonment that you are loved. You occupy belonging. You do not need to persuade lack that there is enough. You occupy support. You do not need to teach confinement the philosophy of freedom. You enter the consciousness of one who is no longer inwardly imprisoned. The old room may continue existing in memory. Its furniture may be familiar. You may occasionally find yourself standing there again. This does not mean you have failed. You know where the door is now. You may leave without condemning yourself for returning. Before you drift deeper, take one small outward action that reflects this inward decision. Subscribe to this channel, not as a promise that you will never doubt again, but as a quiet declaration that doubt will no longer decide who you are. Each time you return, let these teachings remind you to come back to the state you have chosen, gently, without struggle. And now that small outward gesture may disappear from attention. Return inward. The throne is before you, not a throne made of gold or raised above other people. It is the quiet seat of authority in your own consciousness. For a long time, doubt may have sat there. It wore your face. It spoke with your voice. It used your memories as advisors. It called itself realism. It called itself experience. It called itself protection. It did not seize the throne by force. It was invited through repetition. Each time you said, "This fear must be telling me the truth," you invited it. Each time you asked circumstances to determine your identity, you invited it. Each time you believed that one disappointment possessed the authority to describe the rest of your life, you invited it. There is no shame in this. You did not understand what you were granting. You thought you were observing life. You were often issuing inward conclusions about life. You thought you were describing the future. You were preparing a state from which the future would be met. You thought doubt was a response to circumstances. Often, circumstances became more persuasive because doubt had already become the interpreter. Now you understand. The throne belongs to awareness. Awareness may listen to doubt without surrendering authority. Imagine the old ruler rising from the seat. There is no battle. No guards enter. No accusation is spoken. The figure simply discovers that its season of rule is complete. It stands. It removes the heavy garment of authority. It places the crown down. And beneath the costume, perhaps you recognize something surprising. Doubt was frightened. It did not rule because it was powerful. It ruled because it feared what might happen if it stopped watching. It believed constant suspicion was necessary. It believed rest would leave you exposed. It believed a hopeful person was a vulnerable person. You need not hate this old ruler. Hatred would keep you bound to it. You may look upon it with understanding. You tried to protect me. You interpreted the world from what had happened before. You warned me because warning was the only form of care you knew. But you may rest now. You do not decide my identity. Feel how differently the mind receives a dismissal spoken without violence. The old state does not need to defend itself against attack. It may lay down its office. It may become smaller. It may become merely a voice passing through a distant corridor. You do not need to hear the final footstep. You do not need to confirm that it has left completely. Turn toward the throne. Awareness sits there now. I am. Before certainty and uncertainty, I am. Before belief and doubt, I am. Before success and disappointment, I am. Before the answer appears, I am. This being is not doubtful. Doubt is something being experiences. Being itself is open. You may attach a state to it. You may say, I am afraid. You may say, I am secure. You may say, I am forgotten. You may say, I am remembered. But the root is prior to each garment. I am. Tonight the sacred name begins to separate from the old description. You may feel doubt without saying, this is what I am. You may hear uncertainty without joining it to being. You may notice the old question without completing your identity through it. What if it does not happen? The question may hang in the room. You do not need to answer. A question unanswered is not a prophecy fulfilled. Let it hang. Let it lose weight. Let it become only sound. What if I am not enough? Again, do not argue. The phrase not enough is an old measurement. Being existed before the measurement. I am. What if it is too late? Time is being used as a judge. Let the judge step down. Awareness is present now. The ability to occupy another state is present now. What if I fail again? Again is memory speaking. Failure is one interpretation speaking. You are listening from a wider place. I am. You may discover that doubt weakens when it is not fed by immediate answers. It expects argument. It expects resistance. It expects you to present evidence, gather hope, and plead your case. When you do not engage, the question has nothing upon which to fasten itself. It moves through. This is not suppression. Suppression says, you are forbidden to speak. Authority says, you may speak, but you do not decide. There is a deep difference. The first is afraid of the voice. The second knows its place. You may now allow every uncertain thought to take its proper size. It is not the whole sky. It is a small movement within the sky. It is not the ocean. It is one ripple upon the surface. It is not the night. It is one shadow moving across the wall. The wall remains. The room remains. Awareness remains. And you remain free to choose what emotional home receives you before sleep. Perhaps the old voice says, you must solve this tonight. You may answer, not with words, but with the body becoming still. Perhaps it says, you must know what will happen. Let the eyelids grow heavier. Perhaps it says, you must keep watch. Let the shoulders settle into the surface beneath them. Your rest becomes the answer. You are showing doubt that it no longer controls the hour. The hour belongs to sleep. The day may have belonged to action. The evening may have belonged to reflection. This hour belongs to release. Doubt is not permitted to turn sleep into another courtroom. The case will not be heard tonight. No witness will be called. No evidence will be examined. No fearful imagination will be asked to predict the verdict. The doors are closing, not upon possibility, upon argument. You have argued enough. You have tried to prove that your desire could happen. You have tried to prove that you deserve it. You have tried to prove that the past does not control you. But the deepest shift will not come through winning an argument with the old state. It will come when you no longer need the old state's agreement. You do not ask doubt for permission to assume. You do not ask fear whether peace is reasonable. You do not ask yesterday whether tomorrow may be new. Awareness selects. That is enough. One night may not prevent every uncertain thought from ever appearing again. I will not make such a shallow promise to you. But one night can end a reign. One night can reveal that the voice was never the king. One night can make you unwilling to kneel before the same question in the same way. One night can introduce another throne, another center, another relation to thought. Tomorrow, doubt may knock, but tomorrow you may know that it stands outside. It may speak through the door. You may recognize its tone. You may even open the door briefly and feel the old atmosphere. Yet you will know that you possess the power to close it again. This knowledge changes everything. Before, doubt arrived as identity. Now it arrives as a visitor. Before, doubt spoke as destiny. Now it speaks as habit. Before, doubt defined the room. Now it moves within a room larger than itself. Before, doubt wore the crown. Now the crown rests upon awareness. Feel the simplicity of the transfer. No spectacle, no battle, no dramatic declaration, only recognition. I hear you, but you do not rule me. Perhaps even this sentence is too active for sleep. Then reduce it. You do not rule. Softer. Not the ruler. Softer still. Only a thought. And beneath that thought, awareness remains. I am. The forehead may now release its long examination of the future. It does not need to calculate whether belief is strong enough. The eyes may stop looking inwardly for evidence. The jaw may release its debate with the invisible opponent. The tongue need not form another affirmation. The shoulders may surrender the weight of tomorrow. The hands may open, for nothing must be seized. The chest may breathe without using each breath to prepare for difficulty. The abdomen may discover that uncertainty can exist without becoming danger. The legs may rest, for there is nowhere you must reach before sleep. The entire body may begin learning what the mind has forgotten. A question can remain unanswered without becoming a threat. A desire can remain unseen without becoming impossible. A path can remain hidden without becoming absent. You can rest before certainty appears. This is not defeat. This is the first expression of authority. The doubtful self believed rest had to be earned by obtaining proof. The awakened self allows rest to precede proof. The doubtful self said, "Show me the answer, and then I will become peaceful." Awareness says, "I choose the state from which another answer may be born." Tonight, the state need not be perfect certainty. Perhaps certainty feels too distant. Let the state be freedom from compulsory doubt. You are not required to believe the worst. This is already a new position. You are not required to answer every fearful question. This is already a new position. You are not required to make disappointment your preparation. This is already a new position. You are not required to carry the old verdict into sleep. This is already a new position. Let this modest freedom open. There is space where the old conclusion stood. Do not rush to fill it. An empty throne is better than a throne occupied by fear. For a few moments, let awareness sit without description. I am. No demand, no future, no problem attached. I am. Doubt may pass before the throne. Let it pass. A memory may pass. Let it pass. A question may pass. Let it pass. Awareness remains seated. The voice may say, "But what if?" No answer is necessary. I am. The voice may say, "Remember what happened." The memory may be acknowledged. I am. The voice may say, "Protect yourself." The body is resting. I am. The throne is quiet. Authority is not loud. A true ruler does not shout each time a servant enters the room. Awareness does not need to announce its power repeatedly. It remains. This remaining is your first victory over doubt. Not victory through conquest. Victory through non-surrender. You remain awareness while the state moves. You remain being while the question passes. You remain capable of selecting another identity, even before that identity feels completely natural. And soon, as this journey continues, you will learn how to move from the old seat into the fulfilled state without forcing emotion, without fearing contrary thoughts, and without turning assumption into another exhausting duty. But not yet. For now, the first movement is enough. Doubt is no longer upon the throne. Perhaps it stands nearby. Perhaps its voice is still audible. This does not matter. The seat has changed. The crown has changed. The authority has returned. I am. Let the words settle beneath the level of effort. I am. You do not need to decide everything tonight. I am. You do not need to believe perfectly tonight. I am. You do not need to eliminate every question tonight. I am. You need only cease calling the question your ruler. The night is becoming quieter. The old court is emptying. The witnesses are placing down their papers. The doors are closing gently. No sentence against you will be issued here. No former event will determine the whole future. No uncertain thought will receive a crown merely because it appeared. The throne belongs to awareness. The throne belongs to being. The throne belongs to the silent, undeniable presence within you that remains before and after every thought. I am. Rest there. Doubt may become smaller. The room may become larger. The night may become softer. The body may become heavier. You do not need to watch the moment when the old voice fades. You may sleep while it is still speaking. Sleep does not mean it has won. Sleep means you no longer consider its argument important enough to remain awake. Let that be your first act of quiet authority. You will not stay awake to supervise doubt. You will not follow it through every corridor. You will not grant it another hearing. You may rest. The throne is no longer empty. Awareness has returned. And tonight, doubt begins losing the one place from which it ever possessed the power to define your future. You may fall asleep before the answer feels complete. You may lose the thread of a sentence. You may hear only fragments of my voice. A phrase may enter clearly, and the next may pass by like a distant carriage in the night. You may forget where one thought ended and another began. None of this will diminish what is taking place. You are not listening in order to pass an examination. You are not required to remember every principle. You are not being asked to remain alert until some final sentence grants you permission to rest. Sleep is not an interruption of this work. Sleep is part of it. The conscious mind often imagines that understanding must remain active in order for meaning to continue. It believes that if attention wanders, the lesson is lost. It believes that if the eyes grow heavy, something important has been missed. It believes that truth must be held tightly, or it will escape. But truth does not require your tension. A seed does not need the gardener to remain awake beside it. A letter does not become unreadable because the hand that wrote it has gone to rest. Music may continue moving through a room even when no one is counting its notes. In the same way, the atmosphere beneath these words may continue reaching you after the conscious mind has stopped following each sentence. You may not remember what was said. You may remember only how the voice made the room feel. You may remember no words at all and awaken with a quieter relationship to the same question that troubled you before sleep. The deeper mind receives more than language. It receives tone. It receives permission. It receives the difference between pressure and safety. It receives the emotional climate in which the words are heard. And so I do not ask you to listen with effort. Let my voice be present without becoming another duty. You have had enough duties today. Perhaps the day demanded that you remember names, appointments, figures, obligations, instructions, and promises. Perhaps you spent hours trying not to forget what others expected from you. Perhaps your mind has remained tense because it believed that relaxing would allow something important to fall. But this hour asks for another kind of intelligence, the intelligence of release, the intelligence that knows when conscious effort has served its purpose, the intelligence that permits a door to close without standing beside it all night, to make certain it remains closed. You may let attention loosen now. You do not have to hold the teaching. Let the teaching hold you. Perhaps you hear these words clearly. Perhaps they begin to soften at the edges. Both are well. The meaning does not depend upon perfect hearing. You may drift for a few moments and return without knowing where you have been. There is no need to search backward. Do not ask what you missed. The mind that asks what it missed is still trying to turn rest into achievement. There is nothing here to complete correctly. There is nowhere you must arrive before sleep. If you awaken later and hear my voice again, let it be as though you have entered a quiet room that remained waiting for you. No one will question where you went. No one will ask whether you listened properly. You are welcome at every point. You may enter and leave awareness of these words many times. The rhythm continues. The night continues. The body continues moving toward rest in its own way. You do not have to direct every stage. Your body knows more about sleep than the anxious mind allows. It has crossed this threshold many times. Even when you believed you could not sleep, the body eventually found a door that thought could not open. Tonight, you may stop searching for that door. The search itself can become the obstacle. A person who continually asks, "Am I asleep yet?" remains awake in order to receive the answer. A person who measures relaxation remains active as the measurer. You do not need to know when rest begins. You do not need to witness yourself crossing into sleep. Let the boundary become indistinct. Let waking lose its sharpness naturally. Perhaps the room seems near now. Later it may seem farther away. Perhaps the body feels clearly outlined. Later the edges may become vague. Perhaps the voice feels close. Later it may seem to come from another chamber. You do not need to notice these changes deliberately. They may occur without your supervision. I am not guiding you through a test of relaxation. There is no correct order in which the body must soften. The forehead may release before the hands. The breath may deepen before the shoulders descend. One part of you may become quiet, while another remains restless for a time. Let each part move at its own pace. The body is not a row of doors that must be locked one after another. It is a living field. One area softens, and another receives permission. One breath becomes easier, and the message travels. One thought loses urgency, and the muscles no longer need to defend against it. Relaxation is often not something you do to the body. It is what the body does when it no longer believes effort is necessary. So let us remove necessity. Your forehead has been looking ahead. Even when the eyes were occupied with the present, the forehead may have been leaning toward tomorrow. It has tried to anticipate the next demand, the next message, the next expense, the next conversation, the next possible disappointment. The muscles above the eyes have carried futures that have not happened. They have acted as though tension could see farther, but tension does not improve vision. You do not need to see tomorrow from this bed. Let the forehead stop looking ahead, not by command, by permission. Tomorrow is not entering the room now. Tomorrow has its own hour. This hour belongs to the quietening of expectation. The skin across the forehead may become smooth, or perhaps it remains as it is. Do not inspect it. The moment you inspect relaxation, you return to work. Simply let the idea pass through you. Nothing ahead must be solved now. Your eyes have spent the day gathering evidence. They have read expressions, distances, pages, movements, and signs. They may have searched for confirmation that you were safe, wanted, supported, or understood. They may have searched for danger before danger appeared. They may have looked outward and then reported inwardly. This is what life means. Now the eyes may close upon evidence. They do not need to decide the future tonight. Darkness asks no interpretation. Behind the closed lids, there is no account to examine, no face to read, no road to measure, no proof to collect. Let the eyes rest from testimony. The world may remain outside without being watched. Your jaw may have been arguing long after the spoken conversation ended. Perhaps you said little outwardly, yet inwardly you continued explaining, defending, correcting, rehearsing. You may have formed the perfect reply after the moment had passed. You may have answered an accusation never spoken. You may have pleaded your case before people who were not present. The jaw holds many invisible conversations. It prepares words for dangers that may never come. It tries to protect dignity through constant readiness. But tonight, no argument will be won through tension. No relationship will be healed by grinding the same words in silence. No past exchange will become kinder, because the muscles remain prepared to answer it. The jaw may rest from language. The tongue need not form another explanation. You do not need to make anyone understand you before sleep. You do not need to persuade the old voice within. You do not need to deliver a closing argument against doubt. Let the mouth become quiet. Let the unspoken sentence remain unfinished. Perhaps peace begins not when the right words are found, but when the need to continue speaking disappears. Your shoulders have carried more than physical weight. They have carried the idea that if you do not hold everything together, it will fall apart. They have held responsibilities before those responsibilities arrived. They have carried other people's moods, needs, disappointments, expectations, and judgments. They have carried tomorrow as though tomorrow were a bundle placed upon the body tonight. The shoulders may not know that the day has ended. Teach them through rest, not through force. Let the surface beneath you receive a little more weight. The bed does not ask whether the burden is deserved. It does not examine how much you accomplished. It simply supports what is placed upon it. Allow yourself to be supported without explaining why support is necessary. You do not need to earn the mattress beneath you. You do not need to justify the pillow. You do not need to prove that you worked hard enough to receive the night. Rest is not a reward given to those who finished everything. Rest is a movement of life itself. The shoulders may descend because they are no longer responsible for holding the morning above the horizon. You do not turn night into day through effort. The hours move without your assistance. The earth carries you through darkness. Dawn does not depend upon your vigilance. Let tomorrow travel toward you without being carried upon your back. The chest may still contain a question. You may feel it as pressure, tightness, or a subtle readiness. Do not demand that it vanish. A question may be present without governing the whole body. You may allow space around it. You are not trying to push it out. You are letting the body become larger than the question. The breath moves around it. The chest rises. The chest falls. The question remains for a moment. Then perhaps it changes shape. Perhaps it becomes less like a command and more like a sound from another room. You do not need to answer it. The breath does not wait for certainty. It comes while questions remain. It leaves without solving them. This is a quiet lesson. Life continues even when the reasoning mind has no conclusion. The breath does not say, I will return only after you understand everything. It returns because return is its nature. Receive that faithfulness. One breath, then another. No breath asks to be memorized. No breath requires applause. It completes itself and gives way. Your thoughts may learn from this. A thought may enter. It may complete its movement. It may leave. You do not have to preserve it. You do not have to follow it. You do not have to attach identity to it. A thought may simply be one breath of the mind, appearing, passing, leaving space. Perhaps the abdomen has been bracing against uncertainty. It may hold the expectation that something unpleasant is near. It may respond before the conscious mind knows what it fears. Do not accuse the body of doubt. The body has learned through repetition. It remembers tones, situations, and seasons. It may tighten because it believes tightening is preparation. Speak to it without words. There is nothing to prepare for in this immediate moment. The room is here. The bed is here. The breath is here. My voice is here. The feared future is not here. For this moment, the body is not being asked to defend, decide, or respond. The abdomen may release a little, or it may not. Either way, you remain safe enough to continue resting. Safety does not require perfect softness. You can be safe while one muscle is tense. You can be moving towards sleep while one thought remains active. You can be receiving peace while part of you is still learning that peace is permitted. Do not make the presence of tension a reason to become tense about tension. Let the body be imperfectly at rest. This is often deeper than forced calm. The hands have served all day. They have opened doors, held objects, written, lifted, cleaned, prepared, carried, pointed, and protected. Even when still, they may remain psychologically closed around something, a plan, a loss, a person, an outcome, an idea of how life must proceed. Let the fingers know that nothing must be held physically in order for what is yours to remain yours. You may release an outcome from conscious grip without losing the possibility of its fulfillment. You may stop holding another person in imagination without erasing love. You may put down a problem without abandoning responsibility. The hands may open because the night is not a courtroom in which you must present evidence. There is nothing to grasp. There is nothing to prevent from escaping. What is truly yours in consciousness is not preserved by muscular effort. The arms may become heavy. Let heaviness be welcome. Heaviness is not helplessness. It is the body discovering that it does not need to remain ready. You are not preparing to rise. You are not preparing to fight. You are not preparing to chase an answer. The arms may lie where they are. The hands may become warm or cool. You do not need to manage the sensation. The body belongs to the bed for this hour. The hips and legs have carried you through the visible world. They understand movement, distance, and effort. Perhaps some part of you still believes there is somewhere you must reach before you can rest. A better state, a better thought, a stronger belief, a final understanding. But there is no destination at the end of this sentence. You are not walking towards sleep. You are allowing the road to disappear. The legs may stop traveling inwardly. No more running through tomorrow. No more returning to yesterday. No more standing at the threshold of a desired future and asking when the door will open. The legs may become still because the state of being is not reached through physical distance. You are here. I am. The feet need not know the next step. The next step belongs to the waking world. The night has no path to calculate. Let the feet rest from direction. Perhaps by now, some words are becoming less distinct. Let them. You do not need to pull them closer. You may hear only the cadence. You may hear a phrase without knowing what came before it. The conscious mind may begin dropping small pieces of the narration. This is not failure, it is release. A child falling asleep does not apologize for missing the end of a story. The story has served. Its rhythm has carried the child toward another state. Let these words serve in the same way. You are not required to hear the conclusion. You are not required to know which section comes next. You do not need to protect the continuity of the lesson. Continuity belongs to the deeper mind in another form. The conscious mind understands through sequence. The deeper mind often receives through impression. A tone of safety may enter more deeply than 100 explanations. A moment of true release may teach more than an hour of analysis. The feeling that nothing is demanded of you may become the doorway through which another identity enters. So I will not demand that you understand. I will not demand that you believe. I will not demand that you feel certain. You may rest before certainty. You may sleep while the answer is incomplete. The incomplete answer is not dangerous. It is only unfinished to the reasoning mind. Life is not required to reveal every stage before the first movement begins. The seed does not receive a diagram of the tree. The river does not receive a map of every turn before it flows. The morning does not need to see the whole day before it arrives. Completion exists in forms that thought cannot yet display. You may not know what the answer will look like. You may not know which events will carry it. You may not know what action will feel natural tomorrow. You may not know what old belief will loosen while you sleep. Not knowing does not mean nothing is happening. Not hearing every word does not mean nothing is received. Not feeling dramatic change does not mean no impression has been made. The mind trained in effort looks for evidence of progress. It asks, am I more relaxed? Do I believe more now? Has doubt weakened? Is this working? Let these questions pass without answer. The observer who measures progress can become another form of sleeplessness. You do not need to know whether you are closer to sleep. You do not need to know whether the teaching has entered deeply enough. You do not need to know whether the body has released more than it released yesterday. You are not comparing nights. This night is not in competition with any other. Perhaps previous nights contained worry. Let them belong to themselves. Perhaps you fell asleep while afraid. That does not condemn this night. Perhaps you awakened with the same question. That does not determine the morning to come. Each entrance into sleep is another threshold. The old pattern may approach the threshold through habit, but you are not required to invite it across. And yet even this need not become work. You are not standing at the door as a guard. You are resting near the door while another atmosphere fills the room, the atmosphere of permission. You may sleep, the atmosphere of non-judgment. Nothing has gone wrong if doubt appears. The atmosphere of release. The answer does not need to be finished consciously. Let this atmosphere become more important than the exact words. Perhaps my voice says something you do not hear clearly. Let the sound pass through you without being captured. Perhaps a phrase reaches you. You may keep it for one breath and then lose it. Perhaps you remember only this. You may sleep. That is enough. You may sleep without solving the problem. You may sleep without becoming perfectly convinced. You may sleep without controlling thought. You may sleep without holding the desired state in place through force. You may sleep without knowing whether the old voice has become completely silent. Sleep does not wait for the absence of every sound. A city sleeps while distant wheels continue turning. A house rests while wind touches the windows. The sea continues moving beneath moonlight. Rest can contain movement. Your consciousness may contain a passing thought and still descend. Your body may contain one area of tension and still descend. The old voice may whisper and still become distant. You do not need ideal conditions. You need only stop treating imperfect conditions as a command to remain awake. Perhaps the old voice says, pay attention or you will miss the answer. Let it speak. The answer is not hidden in one sentence that must be caught before it disappears. The answer is becoming an inner relationship. It is the relationship in which you no longer regard doubt as the final authority. That understanding can remain even when language fades. Perhaps the old voice says, you must perform the practice correctly tonight. Let that voice become smaller. There is no performance. There is no audience. No one is scoring your sleep. No one is examining your imagination. No distant judge is deciding whether you felt enough. You are not earning transformation through careful listening. You are becoming available to another state by releasing the effort that maintained the old one. This availability may look like sleep. It may feel like drifting. It may feel like losing the sentence. It may feel like forgetting why you began listening. All of these are welcome. Forget the purpose for a while. The deeper purpose does not depend upon conscious memory. You may have come here to end doubt. Now let even that intention soften. The desire to get rid of doubt can keep attention fixed upon doubt. You do not need to watch it leave. You may turn toward rest instead. A person leaving a room does not have to stare at the room behind them. They walk into another space. You are moving into another atmosphere. Not the atmosphere of absolute intellectual certainty. The atmosphere of safety without explanation. The atmosphere in which a question may remain unanswered, and yet the body is permitted to rest. The atmosphere in which the future does not enter as a threat. The atmosphere in which you are not required to hold the whole world together through thought. Let the body receive that atmosphere. Perhaps the forehead is quieter now, because it no longer needs to anticipate. Perhaps the jaw has stopped forming replies. Perhaps the shoulders have lowered without your noticing. Perhaps the breath has found its own depth. Perhaps nothing obvious has changed. It does not matter. You are not looking for proof. The night does not need to show you evidence that night is occurring. Darkness is enough. Stillness is enough. The willingness to remain here is enough. And if you cannot remain here consciously, sleep will carry you beyond conscious remaining. You may drift now. You may return later. You may hear my voice as though from far away. You may hear only certain words. Rest. Safe. No effort. No answer required. You may not remember whether these words were actually spoken or dreamed. Let the boundary dissolve. Imagination does not need a rigid border between what is heard and what is inwardly received. A sentence may enter and become your own thought. A thought may become an image. An image may dissolve into feeling. Feeling may lose its name, and still the impression remains. The deeper mind may be learning something simple. Doubt is not an emergency. A question is not a threat. Uncertainty does not require wakefulness. The answer can continue forming without conscious supervision. You are allowed to disappear from the process for a while. The waking personality may step aside. The one who plans, compares, remembers, and anticipates may become quiet. You will not cease to be. Being remains when the public identity fades. You enter sleep each night and surrender the name, the occupation, the history, and the current problem. For a time, the whole arrangement called my life is released from conscious grip. Yet you continue. The heart moves. The body repairs. Images arise. Awareness enters deeper chambers. Sleep proves that being does not depend upon the personality's continuous management. Let this proof comfort you. You do not keep yourself alive through worry. You do not hold the future in existence through vigilance. You do not preserve what is yours by refusing to rest. Life continues beneath your effort. Let it continue. Let the intelligence that moves breath and blood carry you through this night. Let the same intelligence receive the state beneath these words. Not a demand, not a command shouted with fear. A permission. You may rest from questioning. You may rest from measuring. You may rest from preparing. You may rest from trying to believe. Perhaps this last permission touches something deep. You may rest from trying to believe. Belief forced by effort contains the confession that belief is absent. You have tried to push yourself into certainty. Tonight, certainty is not required. Begin with rest. Rest may become the soil in which certainty grows naturally. A quiet mind is not always the result of having every answer. Sometimes it is the result of no longer insisting that every answer arrive before peace. Let peace precede explanation. Let rest precede evidence. Let sleep precede the final conclusion. You may sleep before the answer is complete. The words may be incomplete. The feeling may be incomplete. The imaginal picture may be incomplete. Your understanding may be incomplete. You are still permitted to sleep. A doorway does not require the whole house to be visible before one crosses it. You are crossing by release, not through knowledge of every room. The next sentence may be the one you hear, or perhaps not. Nothing depends upon it. The teaching is not balanced upon a single phrase, it is carried by the whole atmosphere. And the atmosphere says, you are safe enough to stop listening actively. The atmosphere says, nothing is being demanded. The atmosphere says, you may lose your place. The atmosphere says, sleep is welcome. Perhaps the eyes feel heavier. Do not help them. Perhaps the limbs feel farther away. Do not examine them. Perhaps thought begins forming unusual connections. Let it. The mind near sleep may place one image beside another without reason. A room, a road, a face, a sound from long ago. Do not organize the images. You are not writing a report. Let imagination loosen from the day's order. This loosening is natural. The rational mind may attempt to return. It may say, I was listening to something important. Then let it hear this. Nothing important will be lost through sleep. The deepest part is not a sentence. The deepest part is the shift from effort to permission. If you receive only that, you have received enough. You are not listening in order to work harder upon yourself. You are listening so that inner labor may begin to cease. You are not listening to become a flawless believer. You are listening so that doubt no longer needs to be treated as a flaw. You are not listening to control the night. You are listening until control becomes unnecessary. And even if conscious listening ends now, the movement may continue. The voice may become part of the darkness. The darkness may become part of the voice. The space around you may seem larger. You may no longer know where the words are coming from. Let them come from within. Let the meaning become yours without remembering how it arrived. You may sleep. The answer may remain incomplete. You may sleep. The question may remain unfinished. You may sleep. One thought may still be moving. You may sleep. The body may not feel perfectly relaxed. You may sleep. The mind may not feel perfectly certain. You may sleep. Sleep does not ask for perfection. It asks for release. And release is already beginning whenever you stop trying to determine whether it has begun. The forehead need not anticipate. The eyes need not gather evidence. The jaw need not argue. The shoulders need not hold tomorrow. The chest need not contain the entire future. The hands need not grasp the means. The legs need not carry you toward the end. You are here. The bed is beneath you. The night is around you. My voice may remain near or become distant. Either way, you are allowed to drift. Let the words become lighter now. No need to remember. No need to follow. No need to understand. No need to remain awake. A part of you may continue receiving. A part of you may already be dreaming. A part of you may be listening to the silence between sentences more deeply than to the sentences themselves. Let silence teach you. Silence does not doubt itself. Silence does not ask whether it is silent enough. It does not struggle to continue. It simply remains when sound has ended. You may become like that, not empty, not absent, present without argument, present without effort, present without the need to finish the answer. The answer may finish itself in another form, perhaps as ease, perhaps as a quieter morning, perhaps as a thought you no longer feel compelled to follow, perhaps as an action that appears natural, perhaps as the simple recognition that doubt spoke and you did not obey. You do not need to know which. You may sleep before the answer is complete. You may release the unfinished sentence. You may release the unfinished day. You may release the unfinished future. You may release the unfinished self you thought you had to repair before peace was possible. Being is already here. I am. No effort. I am. No examination. I am. No need to hold the night in place. The words may fade after this, or they may continue. You need not decide. Your body may enter deeper rest while the narration passes gently around it, like rain heard from a safe room, like wind moving through distant trees, like a river traveling in darkness without asking you to know its destination. Let the sound continue. Let awareness soften. Let the conscious mind set down its tools. The answer does not need your wakefulness. The state does not need your supervision. The night is capable of carrying what the day could not complete. And you may sleep before the final word is spoken. And as you continue resting, I would have you understand something that may bring great relief. Doubt is not a monster living inside you. It is not a dark creature waiting for a careless moment in which to destroy what you have imagined. It is not a curse placed upon your desire. It is not a spiritual enemy that becomes stronger each time an uncertain thought crosses the mind. And it does not possess the power to undo your whole inner work, merely because it appeared for a few seconds. Many have become frightened of doubt because they have misunderstood its nature. They imagine that every uncertain thought is dangerous. They hear one fearful question and believe they have ruined everything. They feel an old reaction and immediately begin repairing, correcting, repeating, and struggling. Then the fear of doubt becomes more exhausting than doubt itself. A thought appears. They become afraid of the thought. The fear gives the thought importance. The importance makes it return, and its return is taken as proof that something is wrong. Thus the mind begins circling around a shadow of its own making. I would free you from that circle tonight. Doubt is not a creature you must destroy. It is a chair you have repeatedly sat in. That is all. A chair. A psychological position. A familiar place from which you have looked at your desires, your circumstances, and yourself. When seated there, possibility appears distant. Support appears uncertain. Love appears fragile. Freedom appears to belong to another place or another person. When seated in that chair, even good news may be examined suspiciously. A kind word may be questioned. An opportunity may seem too good to trust. A moment of peace may be interrupted by the thought that it cannot last. The chair has a particular view. It faces the window of expectation, and through that window everything is interpreted according to the state of the one who sits there. The chair itself does not create the world. The position creates the meaning given to the world. You may have sat there for so long that you believed the view was reality itself. You forgot that you were seated. You forgot that another chair existed. You forgot that you could stand. You looked through the window of doubt and said, "This is simply how life is." But it was how life appeared from that position. A person seated very low in a room may see only the wall before them. Another person standing sees the door. Another seated near the window sees the garden. The room is the same. The position alters what becomes visible. Doubt is such a position. It is not your essence. It is not the permanent nature of your mind. It is not proof that you lack faith or imagination. It is the habit of looking at a possibility from the identity that expects not to receive it. This distinction is important. You may think about a beautiful future while seated in doubt. You may imagine abundance while feeling like the person excluded from abundance. You may imagine love while remaining inwardly the one waiting to be abandoned. You may picture freedom while feeling like a prisoner allowed to look at the open country through glass. The images may be lovely. The chair remains the same. Then you wonder why imagination feels tiring. You are trying to pull the desired world toward a position that has already decided it is far away. You are reaching from the chair rather than rising from it. Tonight, you do not need to drag the desire closer. You do not need to wrestle with the chair. You simply begin to notice that you are sitting there. Recognition is the first movement. A person asleep in a chair may remain for hours because they do not know they are uncomfortable. But when they awaken and feel the position clearly, standing becomes possible. So let awareness awaken within the old posture. Perhaps doubt says, "It will not happen." Do not attack the sentence. Notice the chair. From which position is this thought being spoken? It is spoken by the one who expects disappointment. It is spoken by the one who believes the outer world must approve the desire before the desire may be inwardly accepted. It is spoken by the one who has confused former evidence with permanent law. You do not need to prove the sentence false. See where it is seated. Perhaps doubt says, "I am not capable." Again, do not rush to answer. Notice the position. This is the chair of the person measuring present ability by former performance. This is the chair of the one who believes identity is a record rather than a state. This is the chair of the one who sees every mistake as testimony concerning the whole self. The sentence becomes less mysterious when the chair is seen. You begin to understand that doubt does not speak from heaven. It speaks from a position. It is not an oracle. It is an angle of vision. It is not a prophecy. It is an old interpretation rehearsing itself. Perhaps it says, "Nothing ever changes for me." Notice the chair of repetition. From there, yesterday appears to contain tomorrow. From there, every new possibility is forced to pass through the old history before it is allowed to feel believable. From there, the mind says, "Because I have lived in one room, No other room exists, but the chair cannot testify concerning rooms it has never occupied. The doubting state can describe only its own view. It cannot truthfully describe what becomes visible from another state. This is why arguing with doubt is often useless. You ask the old chair to confirm the view from the new one. It cannot. You ask abandonment to explain belonging. You ask scarcity to explain support. You ask confinement to explain freedom. The old state answers honestly, according to its position. It says, I do not see it. And because it does not see it, you conclude that it is not there. But a chair facing one wall cannot see the door behind it. The solution is not to persuade the chair. Stand, turn, move. You need not move far. The movement is inward, perhaps only one emotional step. From, what if I am disappointed again? To, I am not required to predict disappointment. From, nothing is happening. To, I cannot see every movement from where I presently stand. From, I must be certain before I rest. To, I may rest before certainty becomes complete. Each of these is a movement out of the old chair. Not yet a magnificent declaration, not yet total confidence, only a change of position. You are no longer seated entirely within the old conclusion. Space has appeared, and in that space, doubt begins losing its appearance of power. A monster must be fought. A chair may simply be left. Feel the relief in this. You do not need courage for battle. You need awareness of position. You do not need to conquer an invisible enemy. You need only stop giving one psychological posture permanent occupancy. The chair may remain in the room. You do not need to break it. This too is important. Many try to destroy the old state, and in their effort they remain fascinated by it. They inspect it. They attack it. They speak of it constantly. They ask whether it has returned. They measure its strength. They spend the whole night standing beside the chair they claim to have left. Do not do this. Let the chair remain where it is. It is furniture from an older arrangement. You may notice it without sitting down. A fearful thought appears. There is the chair. An old bodily tension returns. There is the chair. A memory presents itself and invites the old conclusion. There is the chair. You do not need to remove it from the room immediately. You simply do not lower yourself into the familiar posture. You remain standing in awareness, or you take another seat. The seat of present safety, the seat of possibility, the seat of being supported before the channel is visible, the seat of not knowing without becoming afraid, the seat of desire already accepted inwardly. At first, the new chair may feel unfamiliar. You may sit there for a moment, and then return unconsciously to the old one. This is not failure. Familiar furniture is found easily in the dark. The body knows its shape. The mind knows how to settle into it. You may discover yourself seated in doubt before you remember choosing. Do not rise angrily. Do not say, I have ruined the night. Do not punish yourself for having followed habit. Stand gently. The old chair has not captured you. You sat. Now you may rise. This is how naturalness changes, not through one violent act, through repeated relocation. Each time you notice, you gain freedom. Before, you sat without knowing. Now you sit and recognize the position. Later, you will feel yourself beginning to sit and choose otherwise. Eventually, the old chair will no longer fit the identity you occupy. It may remain as memory, but it will not feel like home. This is the death of doubt in its truest sense, not the disappearance of every uncertain thought. The end of psychological residence. Doubt becomes a place you once knew, rather than the place from which you live. You may visit it briefly. A circumstance may lead you through its doorway, but you will feel the difference. You will know, this is not my chosen home. You will not decorate it. You will not arrange your future within it. You will not lie down there for the night. You will leave. The power lies in leaving without drama. A traveler does not hold a ceremony each time they leave an inn. They gather what belongs to them and continue. Let doubt become such a temporary inn. You may enter through habit. You may hear the familiar sounds. The walls may remind you of former nights. But you do not unpack the whole life there. You do not call it permanent. You do not write to the future from that address. You stay only long enough to recognize where you are. Then you move. This understanding protects you from fear of thought. One doubtful thought is not dangerous. It is an invitation to a familiar chair. You may decline the invitation. One fearful image is not a decree. It is a picture offered by an old state. You may let it fade. One moment of uncertainty does not erase an assumption. It means a former habit passed through awareness. Nothing more. The deeper mind is not so fragile that every passing thought destroys what has been accepted. You are not walking across a narrow bridge that collapses if the mind glances in the wrong direction. Consciousness is more generous than that. A chosen state becomes natural through return. A passing contradiction does not possess equal authority unless you settle into it and repeatedly call it home. This should allow you to breathe more freely. You do not need to watch each thought like a guard watching prisoners. You do not need to fear the sudden appearance of an old question. Thoughts move. States become powerful through occupancy. The question is not, did doubt appear? The question is, where did I remain? Did you remain seated in the old chair, building a whole future from its view? Or did you notice the position and return gently to another state? This is the practice, simple, quiet, without self-violence. Suppose you think of a desire and doubt immediately says, that is unlikely. Instead of answering, notice your body. Perhaps it leans backward inwardly. Perhaps the chest contracts. Perhaps the mind looks at the desire as though it were far away. You have located the chair. Now do not force yourself to feel certainty. Certainty may be too great a distance for one movement. Begin by standing. Say inwardly, this is one view, not the final view. Feel the body no longer pressed into the old position. There is space. You are not yet required to see the whole desired world. You have simply stopped looking through the old window, as though it were the only one. Perhaps another question may arise. What might be possible from a state in which this desire is not forbidden? Notice how different this is from forcing yourself to declare that every detail is already visible. You are moving. The room opens. The old chair remains behind you. Perhaps you approach another window. You do not yet see the entire road, but the wall is no longer all there is. This is enough. Doubt thrives upon false finality. It says, because I do not see the answer now, there is no answer. Because I have not received yet, I cannot receive. Because one door closed, all doors are closed. Because fear is present, danger must be present. Because the state feels unfamiliar, it cannot become natural. Each doubtful conclusion takes a temporary appearance and gives it permanent authority. Your freedom begins by refusing that finality. You need not declare the opposite with force. You may simply say, this is not the whole. This moment is not the whole. This report is not the whole. This feeling is not the whole. This thought is not the whole. Awareness is larger. Possibility is larger. Being is larger. The chair is only one location within a room larger than the view it provides. Perhaps you have believed that doubt means you secretly do not desire what you claim to desire. But doubt does not usually question the desire itself. It questions your relation to it. You know that you long for peace. Doubt asks whether peace is available to you. You know that you desire love. Doubt asks whether you can be loved without losing it. You know that you desire security. Doubt asks whether life will permit you to rest. The desire may be clear. The chair is the identity from which desire is regarded. You need not increase the desire. You need not make it louder. You need to change the one who is looking. When the observer changes position, the desire changes meaning. From doubt, desire is evidence of absence. You want it because you do not have it. From assumption, desire becomes evidence of a state available to consciousness. You desire it because you are ready to enter another form of being. The same desire, another chair. From the old chair, love appears as rescue. From the new, love appears as natural companionship. From the old chair, money appears as escape from catastrophe. From the new, supply appears as a normal condition of support and intelligent use. From the old chair, freedom appears as a distant door. From the new, freedom begins as the right to select identity before circumstances finish changing. The state alters the meaning of the object. This is why changing position is deeper than repeating words. You may sit in the chair of doubt and repeat, I believe. The words rise from the old seat. Their tone says, I am trying to convince myself. You may sit in the chair of abandonment and repeat, I am loved. The deeper feeling says, I hope someone proves it. You may sit in the chair of lack and repeat, I am abundant. The emotional posture says, perhaps these words will rescue me. The phrases are not wrong. The position gives them meaning. Stand first. Return to bare awareness. I am. No chair attached. No view attached. No prediction attached. I am. This is the moment between seats. You are not yet supported or unsupported. Not yet chosen or rejected. Not yet successful or defeated. You are awareness before the description. I am. From here, you may choose. Perhaps you choose only a modest chair tonight, not the throne of absolute certainty. Perhaps the chair of openness. I am open to another outcome. Perhaps the chair of present rest. I am permitted to stop questioning for this hour. Perhaps the chair of non-condemnation. An old thought has appeared, but nothing has been ruined. These are real movements. Do not despise their gentleness. A person standing from a chair does not need to leap across the room. The first change is simply that the old position no longer carries their weight. Let doubt stop carrying your identity. Let the chair become empty. Imagine it now, if the image comforts you. A quiet room. Perhaps one lamp remains. The old chair stands near a window. You have sat there through many nights. The arms of the chair know the pressure of your hands. The cushion carries the impression of long waiting. From that place, you have watched for letters, footsteps, answers, signs, and changes in the weather of life. You have sat there asking whether tomorrow would repeat yesterday. You have sat there preparing yourself not to receive. You have sat there trying to feel safe through expectation of disappointment. Look at the chair without anger. It was only a place. It could not hold you without your weight. It could not speak without the thoughts you brought to it. It could not determine the view once you stood. Rise now. No sudden movement. Feel the weight transfer. The chair no longer carries you. You stand in the room. Perhaps the legs of imagination feel uncertain. The old seat was familiar. Let uncertainty remain. Standing is still freedom. You do not need to know where you will sit next. You are no longer trapped in the view. Look around. There is more room than you remembered. Perhaps another window. Perhaps a door. Perhaps only open space. The old chair did not show you these things because it faced one direction. Now awareness has more than one direction available. Let the body understand the metaphor. The back may release from the posture of waiting. The shoulders may no longer curve around the old expectation. The hands may open because they are not gripping the chair. The neck may rest because it no longer strains toward the same window. The breath may enter more freely. You have not yet received visible proof, but you have changed position. This is the beginning of every deeper change. The outer room may be the same for a while. The chair remains where it was. The window still reveals the same portion of the night. But you are no longer looking from there. This is the inward movement that precedes new meaning. Perhaps doubt calls from the chair. Sit down again. You know this place. Here you can examine every danger. Here you can prepare. Here you can avoid surprise. You may hear the invitation. Do not argue. Walk slowly toward another part of the room. Perhaps you sit upon the edge of the bed. The bed does not face the future as a threat. It receives the body. Its message is not watch. Its message is rest. Let rest become the new position for this hour. You are not required to move immediately into confidence. Move into rest. Doubt says, remain alert until certainty arrives. Rest says, certainty is not required before the body is supported. Doubt says, keep asking until you know. Rest says, the question may remain unanswered while being continues. Doubt says, do not close the eyes. Rest says, the unseen does not become dangerous because you stop watching. This is another chair, a softer one, the seat of present support. The bed beneath you becomes an imaginal symbol. You are being held now. You are not holding yourself above the earth. You are not carrying the room. You are not maintaining the night. Support exists before the full answer. Feel how doubt loses some authority in this position. It may still speak, but it speaks to one who is resting, rather than one pressed against the window. The same thought sounds different from another seat. What if it does not happen? From the old chair, this was an alarm. From rest, it may be only a question that does not require an answer tonight. What if I am disappointed? From the old chair, this became a complete future. From rest, it is one imagined possibility, passing through a supported body. What if I cannot change? From the old chair, this sounded like truth. From awareness, it reveals its own contradiction. The one asking whether change is possible is already capable of noticing state, and the one who notices state is capable of moving. You have moved tonight simply by seeing the chair. What was unconscious is becoming conscious. What was identity is becoming position. What was fate is becoming habit. What was a monster is becoming furniture. And furniture can be rearranged. Perhaps not all at once. Perhaps one piece at a time. Perhaps the old chair remains for many nights. But once you understand what it is, you no longer fear it in the same way. You may laugh gently one day when you notice yourself seated there again. Ah, this old chair. I know the view from here. I know the predictions made from here. I do not need to remain. This recognition is worth more than a forced declaration. It contains freedom. You become kind toward your own habits. You stop calling yourself weak because you sometimes return. You understand that the mind seeks familiarity, especially when tired, and so you guide it without cruelty. Come, there is another place to rest. Not, how could you doubt again? But, the old chair was near, and you sat without noticing. Stand with me. This kindness prevents the old state from becoming a source of shame. Shame is merely another chair. It says, you should be farther ahead. You should never think this way. You have failed because the old question returned. Do not sit there either. The purpose is not to collect new chairs of self-judgment. The purpose is to recognize awareness as free movement. You may stand. You may choose. You may return. You may rest. There is no monster. There is no curse. There is no invisible force keeping a record of every uncertain thought. There is no punishment for being human. There is only consciousness occupying states and receiving the view appropriate to each. This is lawful, but it is not cruel, because you can move, because you can remember, because awareness is never permanently fastened to one chair. Even now, as you listen, you may move without forming a clear image. The movement may be felt as a slight release. You are less interested in answering doubt. You feel less responsible for preventing it from speaking. You no longer believe its presence is an emergency. This is standing. Perhaps the old thought remains, but you are no longer beneath it. You are looking at it. Perhaps the body remains tense, but you are no longer interpreting tension as prophecy. You are allowing it to soften in its own time. Perhaps certainty has not arrived, but you are no longer calling uncertainty a prison. This is movement. Let the room become quiet now. The old chair is there. You do not need to look at it constantly. It does not become powerful when your eyes close. It cannot cross the room by itself. It cannot force you to sit. Let it fade into the background. Turn toward the support beneath you. The bed, the pillow, the night, the breath, the simple fact of being. I am. This is not a chair. It is the awareness in which every chair appears. I am. Doubt appears within I am. Rest appears within I am. Fear appears within I am. Relief appears within I am. No single state exhausts the possibilities of being. You have worn doubt. You are not doubt. You have sat in doubt. You are not the chair. You have seen life from that angle. You are not the angle. You are awareness capable of another view. Let these distinctions pass beneath conscious effort. You do not need to repeat them. Let them become atmosphere. No monster. Only a habit. No enemy. Only a position, no battle, only movement, no punishment, only return. The old chair may rest empty tonight, or perhaps you sit there once more in a dream or passing thought. Even then, awareness remains capable of rising. Nothing is lost, no manifestation is destroyed, no invisible law has turned against you. You are learning, you are moving. You are becoming less afraid of the mind, and a mind no longer feared becomes easier to guide. Let the voice of doubt become ordinary now. Not sacred, not prophetic, not powerful. Ordinary. A familiar sound from another room. A floorboard settling. A branch touching the window. A clock marking an hour. You hear it. You do not build a future from it. The sound passes. The room remains. You remain. The night remains gentle. The chair is empty. The body is supported. The eyes may stay closed. The forehead need not watch. The jaw need not answer. The shoulders need not prepare. You are not fighting anything. You are simply no longer seated where fear expected to find you. Rest there. In the quiet place between the old position and the state you will soon choose more deliberately. You have not destroyed a creature. You have awakened from a posture. You have not conquered an enemy. You have changed your relationship to a thought. You have not forced certainty. You have discovered mobility. And this quiet ability to rise, to move, and to rest elsewhere is already greater than every doubtful voice that ever claimed you had no choice. Now that you understand doubt as a position rather than a creature, I would have you make another distinction, for without it you may confuse wisdom with fear and call every careful thought a betrayal of faith. Doubt and discernment are not the same. To observe a fact is not to worship it. To recognize a risk is not to surrender your identity to danger. To examine a document, ask a question, seek counsel, count the cost, or reconsider a decision does not mean that you have abandoned the state you desire. The awakened imagination does not make a man foolish. It does not require him to close his eyes while walking near the edge of a cliff and call blindness faith. It does not ask him to ignore a letter that deserves an answer, refuse sound advice, or pretend that every path is equally wise. Discernment belongs to intelligence. Doubt belongs to identification. Discernment says, this deserves attention. Doubt says, this proves I am powerless. Feel the difference between those two voices. The first looks at the circumstance. The second uses the circumstance to pronounce a sentence upon the self. The first may be serious, but it remains clear. The second immediately becomes personal. A letter arrives containing an obligation. Discernment says, I will read this carefully. I will understand what is required. I will take the next intelligent step. Doubt says, this proves life is against me. I will never be free. Something always goes wrong for me. The letter is the same. The inward position differs. One man holds a paper in his hand. Another allows the paper to hold his identity. This is where bondage begins. You may attend to a condition without becoming it. You may say, there is a difficulty before me. You need not say, I am a person for whom difficulty is inevitable. You may say, I do not yet understand this matter. You need not say, I am incapable of understanding. You may say, another opinion would be useful. You need not say, I cannot trust myself. You may say, caution is appropriate here. You need not say, the world is unsafe and I am helpless within it. The words may appear close, but the states are far apart. Discernment remains in relationship with the fact. Doubt becomes psychologically married to it. Discernment considers what is present. Doubt builds an identity from what is present. Discernment asks, what does this situation require? Doubt asks, what terrible thing does this situation prove about me? This distinction will free you from the fear that practical thought interferes with assumption. You do not strengthen a problem merely by recognizing that it exists. A physician may observe a condition carefully without becoming the condition. A navigator may study the storm without declaring that the ship must be lost. A builder may examine a crack in the wall without deciding that the entire house is beyond repair. The observation is not the sentence. The observation may lead to skillful action. The sentence leads to helplessness. You may have been taught to believe that faith requires the refusal to look at facts. Then each time you needed to act wisely, you felt divided. One part of you wanted to examine the circumstance. Another accused you of doubting. You tried not to look. But what is avoided does not always become harmless. Sometimes it grows larger in imagination, because it has not been seen clearly. An unopened letter may become 10 times more frightening than its contents. A conversation postponed through fear may become more difficult than the words that need to be spoken. A practical question ignored in the name of belief may quietly increase anxiety. This is not the freedom I teach. The law of assumption does not ask you to become irresponsible. It asks you to stop allowing responsibility to become an identity of burden. You may open the letter. You may make the calculation. You may speak honestly. You may ask for assistance. You may reconsider a route. You may say no. You may leave a situation that does not honor life. You may seek appropriate help. And through all of this, you may remain inwardly supported, dignified, and free. The action does not define the state. The state gives meaning to the action. Two men may take the same practical step. One acts from panic, the other acts from wisdom. One says, I must do this because I am trapped. The other says, this is the natural action of one who respects himself and expects resolution. Their hands may perform the same movement. Their consciousness is giving two different instructions. Suppose you must examine an agreement before placing your name upon it. Doubt may whisper, if I question anything, I am assuming failure. This is confusion. Discernment reads. Discernment asks. Discernment waits until understanding is sufficient. Discernment does not insult the desired state by choosing carelessness. The person who knows himself supported is not compelled to accept every offer through fear that no other offer will come. The person who knows himself chosen does not tolerate every form of treatment because they are afraid to lose affection. The person who knows himself free is not required to walk through every open door. Inner abundance can make discernment clearer. Scarcity says, take whatever appears, for nothing else may come. Support says, I may look carefully. Abandonment says, remain silent, for honesty may drive love away. Belonging says, truth does not destroy what is worthy of remaining. Confinement says, this is my only chance. Freedom says, I may choose according to wisdom. Do you see how assumption and discernment support one another? A stable identity reduces panic. Without panic, facts can be observed more accurately. Without self-condemnation, mistakes can be corrected more quickly. Without the fear that one decision determines your entire worth, you can make that decision with greater clarity. The doubtful mind does not always see facts clearly. It claims to be realistic, yet fear enlarges what it sees. A small delay becomes permanent refusal. One uncertain expression becomes rejection. One unexpected expense becomes financial ruin. One physical sensation becomes a complete future. One error becomes evidence of total incapacity. Fear does not merely report, it magnifies. It writes conclusions in the margins before the page has been read. Discernment is quieter. It says, let me see what is actually here, not what memory predicts, not what the wounded identity fears. What is here? Perhaps what is here is difficult. Wisdom does not require you to call it easy. Perhaps what is here demands courage. Wisdom does not deny that. Perhaps the wisest action will be uncomfortable. Inner peace does not always mean choosing what is immediately pleasant. It means that discomfort is no longer allowed to define being. You may undertake a difficult action from a peaceful state. You may speak a necessary truth while the voice trembles. You may make a wise change while sadness is present. You may recognize a risk without becoming psychologically possessed by it. Courage is not the absence of information. It is the refusal to let information become a throne. The fact may sit upon the table. It does not sit upon the throne of consciousness. Awareness remains there. I am. The fact is something I observe. It is not what I am. This simple distinction can guide you through many circumstances. Imagine that you are standing before a river that must be crossed. Discernment studies the current. It notices the depth, the stones, the condition of the bridge, and the weather. Doubt looks at the same river and says, I am the kind of person who will be swept away. Discernment asks, where is the safest crossing? Doubt asks, why does life always place rivers before me? Discernment may decide to wait. Doubt calls waiting defeat. Discernment may decide to seek help. Doubt calls receiving help weakness. Discernment may choose another road. Doubt calls changing the route failure. The river is not the source of suffering alone. The identity brought to the river gives every decision its emotional meaning. From the state of support, waiting can be wise. From the state of fear, waiting can feel like paralysis. From the state of freedom, changing direction can be intelligent. From the state of defeat, changing direction can feel like surrender. Do not judge action by appearance alone. Ask what inner position gives rise to it. A person may remain still because wisdom says the moment is not yet right. Another may remain still because fear has convinced them that movement is impossible. A person may act quickly because the way is clear. Another may act quickly because panic cannot tolerate uncertainty. The speed of the action does not reveal the state. The atmosphere beneath it does. Discernment has space around it. Even when a decision must be made quickly, some inward center remains. Doubt compresses the world. It says there is only one chance, one road, one acceptable result. It makes time narrow. It makes thought hurried. It makes the body feel pursued. Wisdom may act decisively without creating this pursuit. It sees the next step. It does not always see the whole road. It accepts that the whole road is not required. Perhaps you have thought that trusting the unseen means refusing advice, but another person may become part of the bridge. A wise word may be one of the ways life responds. An experienced hand may point towards something you overlooked. An expert may possess knowledge your present role does not require you to possess. To ask for counsel does not confess powerlessness. It may express the assumption that support is available through many channels. The identity determines the meaning. From helplessness, advice becomes surrender of authority. You say, "Tell me who I am. Tell me what I must believe. Decide everything for me." From support, advice becomes information. You listen, you consider. You remain the inward authority concerning the state you occupy. You may receive wisdom without giving another person the throne. The same is true of asking questions. A question asked from discernment opens understanding. A question asked from doubt may be an attempt to avoid decision forever. Discernment asks, "What do I need to know in order to move wisely?" Doubt asks the same question repeatedly, because no answer can satisfy the identity committed to uncertainty. One seeks clarity, the other seeks permission to remain undecided. You will feel the difference. A useful question eventually leads towards simplicity. A doubtful question produces more questions, each one carrying the same emotional conclusion. Suppose you ask, "What steps are required?" The answer is given. Discernment says, "I understand. I may begin with the first." Doubt says, "But what if the first step fails? And what if the second becomes impossible? And what if something changes before I arrive?" The issue is no longer information. The issue is the state of the questioner. No amount of detail can give certainty to the one seated in uncertainty. The mind may ask for a map of every mile, but even a complete map cannot guarantee that no stone will lie upon the road. Doubt is not seeking a map. It is seeking a world in which movement contains no unknown. Such a world is not required for wisdom. Discernment can move with partial knowledge. It can say, "I know enough for the next step." This sentence may bring relief tonight. I know enough for the next step. Not enough to control every event. Not enough to predict every response. Enough for the next step. And if this hour belongs to sleep, the next step may be rest. Perhaps no letter should be written now. Perhaps no decision should be made while the body is exhausted. Perhaps the wisest discernment is to recognize that thought has become less clear because the day has been long. Doubt says, "Solve it before you sleep." Discernment says, "A rested mind may see what a tired mind cannot." Doubt says, "Remain awake or something will be missed." Discernment says, "What truly requires attention may be met in its proper hour." Doubt says, "You are escaping." Discernment says, "I am placing the matter where it belongs." Night itself can be an act of wisdom. Rest is not always avoidance. Sometimes rest is the intelligent refusal to continue making decisions from exhaustion. Consider how different the same problem appears at different hours. At midnight, a delay may seem permanent. At morning, it may appear manageable. In weariness, one sentence may sound hostile. After rest, another meaning may become possible. The outer fact did not change during those hours. The state of the observer changed. This should teach you not to place absolute trust in conclusions formed while depleted. A tired mind may speak in the language of finality. Nothing will work. There is no answer. I cannot continue. These may not be revelations. They may be signs that the conscious instrument requires rest. You do not need to build a philosophy from fatigue. You may say, "This conclusion belongs to a tired hour. I will not make it my identity. Let the matter rest with you." Wisdom is not offended by postponement when postponement serves clarity. A field is not neglected because the farmer does not work through darkness. There is a season for activity and a season for renewal. The wise man recognizes both. The doubtful man interprets every pause as danger. You may leave the field tonight. The work is not destroyed. The earth remains. The tools will be available. The morning will bring its own light. You are not abandoning the harvest by sleeping. You are preserving the strength with which it may be gathered. This is discernment. It looks at the whole movement, not only the urgency of one moment. Now consider relationships. Perhaps another person has behaved in a way that causes concern. Assumption does not require you to excuse every act, erase every boundary, or pretend that disrespect is tenderness. You may recognize conduct clearly. You may say, "This is not acceptable to me." This does not contradict the state of being loved. It may arise from it. The one who assumes love does not need to accept humiliation in order to prove faith. The one who assumes belonging does not surrender dignity to remain included. The one who knows inward worth does not call self-abandonment devotion. Discernment may recognize that a conversation is needed. It may recognize that distance is wise. It may recognize that trust requires truth. Doubt makes the behavior mean, "I am unlovable." Discernment makes the behavior information concerning the relationship. The difference is profound. One says, "Because they acted this way, something is wrong with my being." The other says, "Their action reveals something that deserves attention." You remove identity from the other person's hands. Their conduct may influence the form of relationship. It does not determine the sacred meaning of "I am." This allows wiser choices. When identity depends upon being chosen, the mind may ignore what it sees. It may excuse harm because it fears being alone. It may call anxiety love. It may call silence patience. It may call self-erasure kindness. But the state of being loved begins within and includes dignity. From that state, you can see more clearly. You no longer need to interpret every warning as proof of rejection. Nor do you need to ignore a warning in order to preserve the fantasy of being chosen. You can say, "I am worthy of love, and this situation requires clear attention." Both can be true within consciousness. There is no contradiction. Consider money. Assumption does not mean refusing to look at figures. It does not mean spending without wisdom, while repeating that supply is infinite. The state of support can express itself through careful use, planning, learning, restraint, generosity, negotiation, and intelligent action. Doubt looks at the figures and says, "I am doomed." Discernment looks and says, "This is what is present." What is the next wise adjustment? One collapses into identity. The other remains in relationship with the condition. You may count without becoming lack. You may budget without becoming fear. You may decline an expense without becoming deprived. You may seek better terms without becoming ashamed. You may learn a new skill without calling your present ability insufficient in being. The practical act is not the cause of lack. The state from which it is performed determines its psychological meaning. A wealthy consciousness is not proved by carelessness. True abundance includes the ability to direct resources wisely. The one who feels supported need not use waste as evidence of faith. Support permits clarity. Fear often prevents it. Fear may avoid opening the account. Fear may refuse to ask for help. Fear may spend impulsively in order to escape the feeling of limitation. Fear may grip every coin so tightly that life becomes a prison. Discernment looks, it breathes, it decides. It does not make the number sacred. The number is information. It is not identity. The same principle applies to the body. You may notice a change and seek appropriate attention without declaring yourself broken. You may follow wise care without living under the name of illness. You may ask questions without assuming the worst. The body deserves attention. Attention does not require terror. Doubt says, "This sensation proves a terrible future." Discernment says, "I notice this. I will respond wisely." One imagines a whole life from one moment. The other remains present. You are allowed to care for the body from the state of respect rather than fear. The body is not an enemy, nor is it a prophecy. It is a living expression deserving kindness, wisdom, and appropriate care. Do not use spiritual ideas to silence what requires attention. And do not use what requires attention to sentence the whole being. Hold both truths. This condition deserves care. I remain greater than the condition. This situation requires wisdom. I remain supported while I meet it. This fact may influence my next action. It does not define my eternal identity. This is mature assumption. It does not flee the world. It enters the world from another center. Perhaps you have been afraid that noticing risk will create it. Then you have made attention itself frightening. You become afraid to read, ask, plan, or prepare, because you believe one glance at difficulty gives it power. But power does not lie in noticing. Power lies in identification. A sailor may see clouds gathering and adjust the sails. He has not worshipped the storm. He has used perception. He does not say, because clouds exist, I am condemned to shipwreck. He says, conditions are changing. I will respond from skill. The clouds are information. His identity remains that of the navigator. You too may remain the navigator. The weather may change. A wave may rise. The wind may turn. You may alter the course, but you are not the storm. The storm does not receive your sacred name. This is how discernment protects assumption rather than opposing it. When you refuse to look at reality through fear of doubting, unexamined facts may quietly disturb the mind. But when you look from a stable identity, facts become manageable. Some will require action. Some will require patience. Some will reveal that your fear exaggerated them. Some will show that a change is needed. None needs to become your name. You may open the door of the mind and allow information to enter without handing it the keys to the house. Information is a guest. Identity is the owner. The guest may say, there is work to be done. The owner decides how the house will respond. The guest may say, something needs repair. The owner does not conclude that the whole house is worthless. The guest may say, one room is cold. The owner does not call the entire dwelling uninhabitable. Facts describe parts. Doubt turns parts into wholes. Discernment keeps proportion. A wise mind knows the difference between one chapter and the entire book. One difficult chapter may deserve careful reading. It does not authorize you to write the ending in despair. Perhaps you made a mistake. Discernment says, what may be learned, what may be corrected. Is an apology, adjustment, or new decision needed? Doubt says, this proves I always fail. Discernment concerns the act. Doubt condemns the actor. The act may require correction. The actor remains capable of correction. This distinction restores movement. If you call yourself the mistake, change seems impossible. If you recognize the mistake as something done from a former state, another act becomes available. Responsibility is not self-condemnation. Indeed, self-condemnation often avoids responsibility by becoming so occupied with shame that practical repair never occurs. The person repeats, I am terrible, but does not ask, what can be made right? Discernment refuses both denial and needless punishment. It says, I see what occurred. I will learn. I will act if action is possible. I will not use this event as proof that my being is unworthy. This is strength. It is neither arrogance nor weakness. It is the restoration of proper scale. An error is an error. It is not a soul. A delay is a delay. It is not destiny. A risk is a risk. It is not certainty. An opinion is an opinion. It is not identity. A closed door is a closed door. It is not the end of every road. Keep each thing within its true boundaries. Doubt survives by removing boundaries. It allows one event to spread over the entire future. Discernment draws a clear line. This occurred here. It does not possess every place. This is true now. It does not own all time. This requires attention. It does not prove I am powerless. Let these distinctions become restful rather than analytical. You do not need to examine every thought tonight. The purpose is not to place the mind under another microscope. You are learning a tone, the tone of wisdom. Wisdom is calm enough to look. It does not turn away through fear. It does not lean forward in panic. It looks directly and preserves identity. Perhaps tomorrow something will require your attention. You may meet it from this tone. This deserves attention. Feel how clean the sentence is. No catastrophe, no condemnation, no prophecy. This deserves attention. The matter is given its proper dignity. Then awareness remains free. I will meet it as one who is supported. This too is clean. No denial, no helplessness. One sentence concerns the fact. The other concerns identity. The two are not enemies. This deserves attention. I am supported while attending to it. This deserves care. I am not defined by it. This conversation requires honesty. I remain worthy of love. This decision requires patience. I remain free within the interval. This mistake requires correction. I remain capable of change. This road contains risk. I am guided to act with wisdom. Let the pairings become natural. You do not choose between seeing the fact and occupying the state. You do both. You see the fact from the state. That is the great difference. Doubt sees the state from the fact. It looks at circumstances and asks what identity they permit. Discernment begins with identity and asks how that identity wisely meets circumstances. Doubt says, the world will tell me who I am. Discernment says, I know the state I occupy, and from it I will look upon the world. This reverses the old order. You no longer need every fact to become pleasant before you remain inwardly stable. You no longer need every person to approve before you remain dignified. You no longer need every risk removed before you act wisely. You no longer need the road fully visible before taking the next clear step. You are not careless. You are centered. The center sees more clearly because it is not constantly defending its right to exist. Let that center become quiet within you. I am. Around I am. Facts may appear. One paper, one conversation, one decision, one concern. They circle awareness. They do not replace it. I am. The circumstance is present. I am. Wisdom is available. I am. A clear step may reveal itself. I am. No fact has authority to reduce being to helplessness. Feel how the body may respond to this order. The forehead does not need to deny what it knows. It may rest because not every fact requires an immediate conclusion. The jaw does not need to argue with reality. It may become quiet because reality is not sitting in judgment. The shoulders do not need to carry every possible consequence. They may soften because only the next wise step belongs to you. The hands do not need to seize the whole answer. They may open because discernment takes what is needed when it is needed. The abdomen does not need to transform caution into terror. It may release because attention is not danger. You are permitted to be wise without being afraid. You are permitted to be careful without becoming doubtful. You are permitted to look at what is present without calling it permanent. You are permitted to make practical decisions while remaining faithful to the state chosen. This permission may free those who have tried to appear fearless while secretly feeling overwhelmed. You do not need to perform fearlessness. Wisdom may say, I am concerned. Then it asks, what does this concern invite me to see? Doubt says, concern itself proves something is wrong with me. No. Concern is a signal. It may invite attention. It does not deserve worship. Listen to the signal. Take what is useful. Release the sentence against being. Perhaps the signal reveals no immediate action. Then the wise response may be rest. Perhaps it reveals one simple action. Write it down for tomorrow and release it tonight. Perhaps it reveals that counsel would help. Seek it in the proper hour. Perhaps it reveals that the mind has imagined beyond the facts. Return to what is actually known. This is discernment. It restores proportion. It does not promise that every condition will be easy. It reminds you that no condition must become the whole of what you are. Now let the lesson become lighter. You do not need to hold every example. Remember only the tone. This deserves attention. Not, this proves I am powerless. This deserves attention. I remain supported. This deserves attention. I remain capable. This deserves attention. I remain free to respond. The circumstance may remain on the table. You need not carry it into the bed as a verdict. Leave it there. Tomorrow, you may approach it with clearer eyes. Tonight, you are not avoiding reality. You are refusing to confuse reality's present appearance with your eternal identity. The document may rest. The unanswered conversation may rest. The decision may rest. The concern may rest. Their proper hour will come. And when it comes, you may meet it not as the frightened self, asking what the fact proves, but as awareness asking what wisdom now requires. This is discernment. Clear, steady, practical, uncondemning. It sees without kneeling. It acts without surrendering identity. It respects the circumstance without crowning it. Let doubt surrender its disguise as wisdom. Let fear release the name of prudence. You know the difference now. Prudence says, this deserves attention. Doubt says, this proves I am powerless. You may hear both voices. Only one deserves your agreement. The wise voice may speak quietly. It does not hurry. It does not insult. It does not turn one moment into an entire life. Listen for that voice. It belongs to the state from which clear action becomes possible. And if no action is required tonight, let wisdom offer its simplest counsel. The day has ended. Rest now. What deserves attention will receive attention. What belongs to tomorrow need not become tonight's identity. You remain. I am. The circumstance rests outside the sacred name. I am. Wisdom remains available. I am. Power has not been taken from you because something requires care. I am. And from this quiet center, you may allow the eyes to remain closed, the body to be held, and the night to continue without turning caution into fear or facts into fate. And now, as the night becomes quieter, listen for the smallest voice in the room. Not my voice, not the sounds beyond the walls, the quieter voice that often appears after hope has spoken. You imagine a different life, and then it whispers, what if it does not happen? You allow yourself to feel supported, and it whispers, what if you are only pretending? You begin to enter the state of being chosen, and it whispers, what if you are not enough? You release the old story for a moment, and it whispers, what if you have misunderstood everything? You feel the possibility of a new beginning, and it whispers, what if it is already too late? These questions may arrive so quickly that they seem to be the voice of intelligence itself. They may sound careful, reasonable, even protective. They may appear to ask for information. But doubt is not always seeking an answer. Often, the question is a doorway. It is inviting you to step back into an old identity. The words may concern the future, but the purpose of the question is to restore the past. What if it does not happen? Listen beneath the sentence. The deeper message may be, become again the one who waits. What if you are not enough? The deeper message may be, return to the one who measures worth through another person's response. What if you have misunderstood everything? The deeper message may be, return to the one who distrusts inner knowing and gives final authority to appearances. What if it is already too late? The deeper message may be, return to the one who believes time has greater creative power than consciousness. The question does not merely ask. It positions. It places you somewhere. A question may move the whole body into an identity before a conscious answer has been formed. What if it does not happen? May cause the chest to lean toward the future. The mind begins waiting. The body begins preparing for disappointment. The desired state is placed at a distance. In one short sentence, you are no longer seated within fulfillment. You are standing outside it, looking through a window, wondering whether permission will ever be granted. This is why I would not have you spend the night answering every what if. You may construct the perfect reply, and another question will appear. You may say, it will happen because imagination creates reality. Then the whisper asks, but what if my imagination is not strong enough? You may answer, the law is impartial. Then it asks, but what if I have not assumed correctly? You may say, I can choose another state now. Then it asks, but what if I return to the old state tomorrow? The doubtful identity is not satisfied by information, because information is not what it seeks residence. It wants you to sit again in the old chair. It wants you to look from the former position. It wants the familiar body, the familiar tension, the familiar anticipation. If you answer one question, it simply changes its clothing. The voice says, yes, perhaps that is true, but what about this? And this, and this? It is not attempting to arrive at peace. It is attempting to keep the trial open. Once you see this, you no longer need to become the advocate assigned to defend your desire through the night. You need not answer each objection. You may ask a deeper question. Who is speaking? Not in accusation, not with hostility. Simply, from which identity does this question arise? This changes everything. What if it does not happen? Who asks? The one who believes the desire is still separate. The one who looks toward fulfillment rather than from it. The one who expects the outer world to decide whether the inward state was valid. Now the question is understood. You do not need to prove that it will happen. You need to stop becoming the one who stands outside the state asking for a guarantee. Return, not to an argument, to a position. What would I be without the need to ask this? Perhaps you would not feel ecstasy. Perhaps only a little less vigilance. Perhaps you would breathe as one who no longer watches the road every moment. This is the movement. The question wanted to place you in waiting. You return to inward possession. The whisper says, what if it does not happen? You do not reply. It certainly will. You rest in the state where the question is no longer necessary. This is stronger than argument. Argument accepts the question's authority and tries to defeat it on its own ground. Assumption leaves the ground. Consider the difference between a man arguing that he owns his home and a man simply falling asleep in his own bed. The first produces documents, names witnesses, and demands recognition. The second turns down the lamp. Which one occupies ownership more naturally? The whisper always asks for documents. The fulfilled state rests. This is why, as you move nearer to sleep, you may let many questions remain unanswered. Their unanswered condition does not make them powerful. A question only receives creative force when you accept the identity from which it was formed. What if I am not enough? Again, listen beneath the language. Enough for whom? Enough according to what measure? Enough to be loved? Enough to be supported? Enough to receive? Enough to begin? The question pretends to measure a quality, but it often hides an old courtroom. Someone once appeared to judge you. A parent, a teacher, a companion, a stranger whose opinion should never have been given authority. Perhaps you were compared. Perhaps you were overlooked. Perhaps you tried and did not receive the recognition you expected. An event became an inward standard. Years later, the standard asks the question again. What if I am not enough? The voice sounds current. The measurement may be ancient. Do not answer it by listing achievements. Achievements can be questioned. You may say, I have done this and this and this. The whisper will reply, but was it sufficient? You may say, others value me. The whisper will ask, but will they continue? You may say, I have improved. The whisper will ask, but have you improved enough? The court of enough has no final number. The measure moves whenever you approach it. It is designed to keep identity on trial. Leave the court. You do not become enough through winning the argument. Being is prior to measurement. I am. Before comparison, I am. Before approval, I am. Before performance, I am. Before another person chooses how to respond, I am. The question, am I enough, becomes smaller when placed beside the undeniable fact of being. You do not need to prove the worth of existence. Being is not an examination. You may still learn. You may improve a skill. You may correct an error. You may become wiser. But growth does not mean the root was unworthy. A tree may grow without apologizing for the seed. A child may learn without first becoming deserving of instruction. You may unfold without calling your present being insufficient. This is the distinction the whisper does not understand. It says, you must become enough in order to receive. Awareness says, I select the state of one who is worthy of receiving, and from that state growth becomes natural. The order changes. You do not climb toward worth. You act from worth. You do not wait to become lovable. You enter the state of being loved. You do not improve in order to earn existence. You express life because you exist. So when the whisper asks, what if I am not enough? You need not provide evidence. Notice the identity it is trying to restore. The one still waiting for judgment. Do not sit there. Let the question pass before the throne, without receiving a hearing. I am. The sacred name is not followed by not enough. Leave it open. I am. Then perhaps, gently, I am allowed to exist without being measured. Or, I do not need another person's uncertainty to become my identity. Or simply, this question does not decide who I am. The whisper may return. You need not be surprised. An old official may continue arriving at the courthouse after the court has closed. Habit has not yet received the news. Let it find the doors locked. No anger, no argument. The case is not being heard tonight. Now listen to another question. What if I have misunderstood everything? This question often appears after you have felt something true. A moment of peace comes. Then the mind asks whether peace was deception. You imagine the end and feel relief. Then the mind asks whether you performed the imaginal act correctly. You recognize a new possibility. Then the mind asks whether the recognition was foolish. The question may disguise itself as humility. It says, I do not want to be mistaken. But beneath it may live an identity that does not trust itself to occupy any state without external permission. It wants a certificate, a voice from outside, an authority to say, yes, your inner act is valid. Yes, you felt correctly. Yes, you may rest now. But the authority you seek is the awareness doing the seeking. No outer person can occupy the state for you. Another may explain, another may guide, another may offer language, but at the moment of assumption, you decide. The whisper asks, what if I have misunderstood everything? Ask instead, what is it afraid would happen if I trusted the inner act? Perhaps it fears disappointment. Perhaps it fears appearing foolish. Perhaps it fears being responsible for choosing a state. As long as you remain undecided, you can continue saying, I do not know. Decision makes you vulnerable to a new identity. The old self prefers endless study to final occupancy. It would rather examine the map forever than risk walking. It asks for another explanation, another method, another sign, another authority, another night of preparation. The whisper says, perhaps you have misunderstood. The deeper request is, do not leave the familiar self yet. Remain the seeker. Remain the one almost ready. Remain the one waiting for complete intellectual certainty. But understanding is not always completed before movement. A child does not understand balance intellectually before taking a step. The body learns through occupancy. A musician does not master every principle before producing the first meaningful note. One enters the art. One becomes familiar. One learns from participation. The state of fulfillment is not a theory to be perfectly understood before you are permitted to enter. It is a psychological room. You may sit within it before you can explain the architecture. You may feel relief before you know every cause. You may rest from questioning before you can answer every question. Perhaps you have misunderstood a phrase. Perhaps one image could be altered. Perhaps tomorrow you will understand more clearly. None of this requires you to call yourself powerless tonight. The law is not a trap laid for those who use imperfect words. The deeper mind is not waiting to punish a technical mistake. The creative act is a relation to identity. You are learning the relation. You do not need perfect language. A small child may call a thing by an imperfect name and still touch it. You may approach the state through a phrase that later changes. What matters is whether you move from absence toward occupancy, from fear toward support, from waiting toward acceptance. The whisper wants perfection, because perfection delays entry. It says, do not sit until you fully understand the chair. Do not sleep until you have studied sleep. Do not love until you know love cannot hurt. Do not choose until you know every outcome. But life cannot be lived from complete intellectual protection. It is lived through state. So when the question comes, what if I have misunderstood everything? Do not answer the word everything. It is too large. Doubt loves large words. Everything, nothing, always, never, too late, impossible. These words turn one uncertainty into a world. Reduce the scale. Perhaps I do not understand every part. I understand enough to release struggle for this moment. Perhaps I do not know every operation of imagination. I know that I can choose a kinder state than fear. Perhaps I cannot explain the whole bridge. I know I do not need to build it tonight. This is discernment. It gives uncertainty its proper size. The whisper asks an enormous question, so that you will return to a very small identity. You respond by returning to the largeness of awareness. I am. The question appears within me. It is not larger than me. Another whisper comes. What if it is already too late? Time has frightened many, because they have mistaken duration for authority. A state has existed for years, and the mind concludes that it must exist forever. A desire has remained unfulfilled for a long period, and the whisper says the door has closed. An opportunity passed, a relationship changed, the body aged, a decision was delayed, and now time is called as a witness against possibility. What if it is already too late? Again, ask which identity is speaking. The one who believes time is a prison, the one who believes the past owns the future, the one who sees years as walls rather than measurements, the one who imagines awareness growing old in the same way the body does. The body has a history. Awareness is present now. The state has duration. Awareness has choice now. A road may have been walked for decades. The traveler still stands in the present. Time may strengthen habit. It does not transform habit into essence. The whisper says, "You have been this way too long." But this way is a path, not being. A river may flow through one channel for many years and still be redirected. A room may remain closed for decades and still open when the key turns. A book may rest unfinished and still receive another chapter. The past does not vanish, but its authority can change. You may carry wisdom forward without carrying the sentence. Perhaps an opportunity truly belonged to a particular time and no longer exists in that exact form. Discernment may acknowledge this. But doubt turns one closed form into the death of the state itself. One position is gone, therefore purpose is gone. One relationship changed, therefore love is gone. One season passed, therefore beauty is gone. One road closed, therefore freedom is gone. This is the deception. Forms move. States remain available in new expressions. You may have desired one door because you believed freedom stood behind it. The door may close. Freedom is not dead. You may have desired one person because you believed love could come only through that face. The relationship may change. Love is not dead. You may have desired one occupation because you believed recognition lived there. The position may pass. Expression is not dead. Time may remove a form. It does not remove awareness's capacity to occupy the state the form symbolized. Sometimes the closing of one form reveals that you had made the messenger more sacred than the message. The whisper says, "Too late." Awareness says, "The form may have changed, but being remains available to another expression." You need not force optimism. You need not deny grief over what passed. You may honor the form. You may mourn a door. You may regret a delay. But do not place the whole kingdom inside one vanished room. There are rooms consciousness has not yet imagined. There are roads the former identity could not see. There are expressions of love, support, purpose, and freedom that the mind seated in the past cannot calculate. The question, "Is it too late?" cannot be answered from the old state, because the old state sees only the roads it has already traveled. Change position. Then another map becomes visible. Tonight, you do not need the map. You need only withdraw authority from the sentence, "Too late." You may say, "The past has happened. It does not decide every form the future may take." Or, "Time has passed, but awareness is present." Or simply, "I will not use the clock to condemn being." Feel the body receive this. The chest has perhaps been racing against time. The shoulders have carried years as weight. The forehead has tried to recover what was lost through constant thought. Let the years rest outside the bed. They have already moved. You do not have to carry them physically through the night. This moment has no age beyond the meaning you give it. The breath entering now is not yesterday's breath. The awareness hearing now is present. The ability to choose a state belongs to the present. Let the whisper ask, "What if it is too late?" Let the words move by like a train that will not be boarded. You remain at the station. You do not chase it. You do not need to discover where it goes. The train carries the old identity. Let it depart empty. Now perhaps another what if arises, more personal to you. What if I lose what I receive? What if I cannot sustain it? What if people laugh? What if the same pattern returns? What if I become hopeful and hurt myself again? All these questions wear different faces. Look beneath them. What identity are they inviting you to occupy? The one who believes good is unsafe. The one who believes possession must be followed by loss. The one who believes joy makes a person vulnerable. The one who believes disappointment can be prevented through refusal to receive. This identity does not fear only failure. It may fear fulfillment. Fulfillment requires the old self to release its occupation. If support becomes natural, who are you without the daily role of carrying everything alone? If love becomes secure, who are you without waiting for reassurance? If freedom becomes ordinary, who are you without the obstacle that organized your attention? If the answer arrives, who are you without the question? The old identity may whisper, "What if?" not because it knows the future, but because it fears unemployment. The question has given it a task. It reviews evidence, it predicts, it warns, it checks, it asks again. Without the question, It does not know what to do. Be gentle with this part of you. Do not mock it. Do not tell it that it is foolish. It learned vigilance because vigilance once felt necessary. It built a profession from uncertainty. Tonight, you may say inwardly, your work is complete for this hour. You do not need to anticipate. You do not need to protect me from joy. You do not need to prevent disappointment by refusing peace. You may rest. The whisper behind what if may be a tired servant afraid to put down its tools. It believes that if it stops questioning, the house will be unguarded. Show it another form of safety, not a guarantee that nothing difficult can ever occur. The safety of knowing that awareness is not destroyed by events. The safety of meeting tomorrow from a rested state. The safety of not rehearsing pain before pain exists. The safety of support within being. Perhaps the whisper softens when it no longer needs to perform protection. What if it does not happen? I do not need to prepare for disappointment now. What if I am not enough? Being is not under examination tonight. What if I have misunderstood? I am allowed to rest before understanding is complete. What if it is too late? Awareness is present now. Do not use these replies as weapons. They are not answers in a debate. They are doors out of the old identity. Say one, if it helps. Then leave. Do not wait to see whether doubt agrees. A prisoner does not require the cell's approval before walking through the open gate. A former ruler does not need to endorse the new government. The question may continue speaking after you have changed position. Let it. The old room has an echo. You are hearing the echo, not receiving a new instruction. This understanding will be important as the night continues. The mind may ask questions even while the deeper state is changing. Do not use their presence as evidence that nothing has changed. A question may appear because change has begun. The old identity senses that its familiar place is becoming less secure. It calls you back. It says, are you certain? Look at the old evidence. Remember the old pain. Do not move too far. You do not need to assure it. Continue gently. The aim is not to become a person who never forms an uncertain question. The aim is to become the one who recognizes the position from which the question comes, and who is free to decline that position. This is maturity. You do not fear the mind. You understand it. You know that words can contain hidden invitations. You know that questions can be doors. You know that not every door must be entered. Perhaps tonight the whisper comes once more. What if this night changes nothing? Notice the cleverness of the old state. It uses the teaching itself as another reason to doubt. It asks you to evaluate the night before the night has ended. It asks for visible evidence before sleep. It asks you to turn the whole experience into another examination. Do not answer. This night is not required to prove itself while you are still within it. You are not required to awaken transformed in some dramatic manner. A change may begin as the simple ability to hear the question without becoming it. Perhaps that has already happened. A few moments ago, what if sounded like the future. Now it may sound more like habit. This is change. Perhaps the body remains uncertain, but you are less frightened of uncertainty. This is change. Perhaps doubt still speaks, but you know to ask who is speaking. This is change. The whisper says, what if nothing changes? Awareness says nothing. It rests. Silence is the response. The question expected a courtroom. It found an empty hall. Let the empty hall remain. No lawyers, no witnesses, no judge appointed by fear. The words what if may echo once, then again, more faintly. They may not disappear completely. The building is large, but no one is seated there to hear the case. You have gone elsewhere, perhaps to a quiet bedroom, perhaps to a chair beside a low lamp, perhaps to the simple awareness of being. I am. The question appears. I am. The question changes. I am. The question disappears. I am. Another question appears. I am. Awareness does not need to move with each one. Clouds cross the sky. The sky does not answer them. Waves rise upon the sea. The sea does not argue with their shape. Questions move through being. Being remains. Let your relationship with what if become like this. You hear it. You do not become hurried. You notice its direction. You do not follow. You sense the identity it offers. You do not put it on. The question may remain incomplete. The future may remain unwritten. You may remain at rest. This is perhaps the deepest answer. Not certainty about every event. Freedom from being governed by uncertainty. You may not know what tomorrow brings. You can still refuse to meet tomorrow as the one already defeated by it. You may not know how the desire will take form. You can still refuse to remain the one standing outside the state. You may not understand every operation of consciousness. You can still choose a more peaceful identity than the one that doubts its right to choose. You may not recover every form that time has carried away. You can still accept the states of love, purpose, support, and freedom in expressions not yet known. The whisper asks for details. Awareness chooses being. Details belong to the bridge. Being belongs to now. Perhaps this distinction allows the jaw to soften. No answer must be spoken. Perhaps the forehead releases. No future must be solved. Perhaps the shoulders lower. No uncertainty must be carried as a burden. Perhaps the breath becomes quieter. No question controls the air. The whisper may become no louder than the movement of curtains in a distant room. There is sound. There is no command. There is movement. There is no emergency. There is a question. There is no throne. Let the words "what if" lose their sharpness. What if? Two ordinary words. They have frightened you only when an old identity completed them. What if it does not happen? What if something else, wiser than your current plan, is forming? What if the delay has no final meaning? What if the old evidence is completing itself? What if the state can become natural quietly? You could answer with brighter possibilities, but even these may be unnecessary. The deepest freedom is not replacing every fearful what if with a pleasant one. It is recognizing that possibility remains open and no question has the authority to define being. Let possibility remain open. No conclusion, no forced answer, no disaster written in advance, no miracle demanded at once. Open. The future is open. Awareness is present. The old identity is no longer the only speaker. This is enough. The whisper may ask, what if you forget all of this tomorrow? Then tomorrow, when you remember, you return. Naturalness is not destroyed by forgetting. The return is part of naturalness. You are not asked to carry these words tightly through every hour. You are learning a movement. Hear the question. Notice the identity. Decline the seat. Return to being. Simple. The whisper may ask, what if you cannot return? The one hearing the question is already standing in awareness. You have returned enough to notice. The capacity is present. No more proof is required. Perhaps you are drifting now. The sentences may become less distinct. Let only the movement remain. A question comes. You do not chase it. A question comes. You do not answer from fear. A question comes. You listen beneath it. An old self is calling. You do not need to go. A question comes. You remain. I am. The old voice may ask. The night does not answer. The old voice may ask again. The body rests. The old voice may call your name. You do not need to wear the identity it offers. You are awareness. You are here. You are supported by the bed, the breath, and the night. Nothing must be decided before sleep. The whisper may fade, or it may continue far away. Either is well. Its power was never in its volume. Its power was in your willingness to become the one from whom it spoke. That willingness may now be withdrawn. Gently, without struggle, without another long reply. The question is not the future. The question is not your identity. The question is not a command. It is a doorway to an old room. You see the doorway. You do not enter. You remain where the body is held. You remain where the breath moves freely. You remain where awareness needs no answer in order to be. I am. And tonight, every whispered what if may gradually discover that the version of you it came to restore is no longer waiting in the same place. There is a name you have spoken more often than any other. You have spoken it in moments of confidence and in moments of fear. You have spoken it when you felt loved, when you felt rejected, when you felt capable, when you felt uncertain, when the way appeared open, and when every path seemed hidden. The name is simple. I am. Before every description you have ever given yourself, these words were present. I am tired. I am worried. I am forgotten. I am not capable. I am the one for whom it never works. The description changes. The sacred name remains. And this is where doubt has borrowed its authority. Doubt by itself is only a movement. a question, a sensation, a thought passing through awareness. It has no crown of its own. It has no creative throne of its own. It cannot become an identity until the sacred name is joined to it. Fear may be felt without becoming I. Uncertainty may appear without becoming I. A memory may return without becoming I. But through repetition, you may have joined these passing conditions to being. You felt uncertainty and said, I am uncertain. You experienced being overlooked and said, I am forgotten. You made a mistake and said, I am not capable. A desire remained unseen and you said, I am the one for whom nothing works. The condition borrowed the name. The name gave the condition intimacy. Intimacy became familiarity. Familiarity became identity. And identity began speaking as though it were the truth of being itself. But the condition was never the sacred name. It was joined to the sacred name. This is the distinction I would have you feel as the night continues. You are not required to fight the condition. You are not required to prove that you have never felt it. You are not required to force it out of consciousness. You need only stop giving it the name that belongs to being. Doubt may be present, but I do not call doubt I. Let that sentence settle quietly. Doubt may be present, but I do not call doubt I. This is not denial. You are not saying doubt is absent when you can feel it moving. You are saying the movement does not receive your identity. A storm may pass across a field without becoming the field. A guest may sit within a house without becoming the owner. A bell may sound within a tower without becoming the stone from which the tower was built. Doubt may move within awareness. It does not become awareness merely because awareness notices it. You are the one who knows the doubt is there. This knowing is already larger than the doubt. If doubt were the whole of you, there would be nothing in you capable of observing it. If fear were your essence, you could not step back and say, fear is present. The ability to notice reveals a distinction. There is the state, and there is the awareness of the state. The state changes. Awareness remains. A doubtful thought rises. You know it. The thought fades. You remain. A feeling tightens the chest. You know it. The feeling alters. You remain. A memory enters. You know it. The memory passes into the background. You remain. I am. This is the name of the one who remains. Not the name of every passing condition. For years, you may have spoken the sacred name carelessly, not because you were foolish, but because no one taught you to hear what you were doing. You said, I am unfortunate. Believing you were describing a season. You were joining being to misfortune. You said, I am always the one left behind. Believing you were summarizing experience. You were fastening identity to abandonment. You said, I am simply a doubtful person. Believing doubt to be a fixed feature of character. You were giving habit the dignity of essence. The habit did not possess that dignity before you gave it. A sentence may appear harmless because it sounds familiar. Yet every sentence beginning with I am carries more than information. It reveals occupancy. It tells consciousness where you believe you live. When you say, I am uncertain, you do more than report that a question exists. You place the self inside uncertainty. You make uncertainty the room from which every possibility is examined. Then even clear evidence may be received doubtfully because the occupant has already chosen the room. When you say, I am forgotten, you do more than acknowledge that someone has not spoken. You turn another person's silence into your name. The silence may last an hour. The name may govern years. When you say, I am not capable, you take one failure, one delay, one unfamiliar task, or one moment of fatigue, and ask it to define the whole intelligence of being. The event is small. The identity becomes vast. When you say, I am the one for whom it never works, you gather selected memories, arrange them like stones, and build a house of inevitability. Then you enter the house and call its walls reality. But the builder remains greater than the house. Awareness constructed the identity through acceptance. Awareness may cease maintaining it. You do not need to demolish every wall tonight. You do not need to examine every stone. You may simply stop calling the house I. This is a condition I have inhabited. It is not what I am. This is a conclusion I have repeated. It is not the source of being. This is a voice I have heard many times. It is not the sacred name. Feel how the burden changes when condition and identity are separated. Uncertainty becomes a passing atmosphere rather than a permanent self. Rejection becomes an event rather than a definition. Incapacity becomes a temporary assessment rather than an eternal sentence. A pattern becomes a pattern rather than destiny. You may then respond more wisely because you are no longer defending an identity built from the problem. A person who says, I am incapable, fears every lesson because the lesson seems to confirm the name. A person who says, I am learning, may meet the same difficulty without becoming diminished by it. A person who says, I am forgotten, interprets every pause as further evidence. A person who knows that silence is not identity can wait without becoming erased. A person who says, nothing works for me, sees every imperfect beginning as proof. A person who understands that an old result belongs to an old state may try another direction without carrying shame. The event may be the same. The sacred name has been released from it. This is not merely a change in vocabulary. You may change the words and preserve the old identity beneath them. You may say, I am confident, while inwardly remaining the one who fears exposure. You may say, I am loved, while listening for abandonment. You may say, I am successful, while treating every delay as humiliation. The lips may offer a new name, while the emotional being continues wearing the old one. So I do not ask you merely to replace sentences. First, return to the name before description. I am. Let it stand unfinished. I am. No adjective, no condition, no history, no prediction. I am. The mind may rush to complete it. I am worried. Pause before the final word. I am. Worry is present, but I am. I am tired. Pause. I am. Tiredness is present, but I am. I am alone. Pause. I am. A room may be empty, a person may be absent, but awareness is present. I am. This pause is powerful because it breaks the automatic marriage between being and condition. The mind has completed the sentence so quickly for so long that the joining seemed unavoidable. Now you discover that there is a moment before completion, a sacred interval. Within that interval, identity is free. The condition may remain nearby, but it has not yet received the name. Rest in the interval. I am. Perhaps the body becomes uncertain without the familiar conclusion. It has known the old sentence. It knows what posture belongs to it. I am worried, tightens. I am rejected, collapses. I am responsible for everything, hardens. I am not safe, prepares. When you stop completing the sentence, the body may wait. What must I become now? Let it wait. You do not need to attach a new grand state immediately. Bare being is not empty. It is the open source from which states are selected. A cup free from yesterday's drink is not useless. It is available. A page without the old sentence is not meaningless. It is unwritten. A room without the old occupant is not abandoned. It is ready. I am. The old condition may approach and ask for the name again. It knows how to borrow it. A sensation appears in the abdomen. The mind says, I am afraid. Pause. Fear is present. I am aware. The distinction remains. A person does not answer as expected. The mind says, I am not wanted. Pause. An event has occurred. An interpretation has appeared. I am. A plan becomes uncertain. The mind says, I am lost. Pause. The road is unclear. Awareness is not unclear. I am. This movement may seem almost too gentle to matter, but the deepest changes often begin where language and identity part company. The old state has survived through immediate naming. A sensation appeared, and you named the self. An event occurred, and you named the self. A memory returned, and you named the self. Now you name the condition as condition. Fear is present. Doubt is present. Sadness is present. Fatigue is present. Confusion is present. Then you leave the sacred name free. I am. You are not reducing life to grammar. You are revealing an inner mechanism. The words I am are like a seal placed upon an order. Without the seal, the order may be considered, altered, or set aside. With the seal, it carries authority. Doubt writes many orders. Prepare for disappointment. Remain watchful. Expect rejection. Do not trust relief. Do not begin, for failure may expose you. Do not rest, for danger may approach. These orders arrive upon the desk of consciousness. In the past, you may have sealed them. I am afraid. I am unsafe. I am the one who must be disappointed. The seal was placed. The body, imagination, and perception began carrying out the order. Now the papers may still arrive. Doubt is accustomed to writing. Let it write. You do not need to tear up every page in anger. You simply withhold the seal. The order says, something will go wrong. You read it. You do not sign it with I am. The order says, you are not enough. You notice it. You do not seal it. The order says, nothing has changed. You hear the old clerk speaking. You do not make it law. The page remains only a page. This is authority without struggle. Doubt loses creative force when it no longer borrows the sacred name. Do not fear the appearance of the paper. Fear is another seal. Do not say, I must prevent this thought. The attempt to prevent may give the thought new importance. Let it appear. You know what it is. An unsigned order. A suggestion from a former state. A report asking to become identity. You are not required to grant the request. Perhaps doubt has spoken with such confidence that you believed it must know something. It may say, you know how this ends. But doubt knows only how the old state ended before. It cannot see from the identity not yet occupied. It carries records, not revelation. It says, people like you do not receive such things. But who is you in that sentence? The former identity, the one formed from selected memories. The one who borrowed the sacred name and joined it to limitation. If the name is withdrawn, the sentence loses its subject. People like whom? The old character, the former state, the habit that has been practiced. You are awareness capable of another identification. The old statement no longer contains the whole of you. This is why the return to I am is not an escape from practical life. It is the return to the point at which practical life ceases to define the source. The source is awareness. Conditions are expressions. A condition may be difficult. It may require courage, patience, help, or action. But difficulty does not own the name. You may face uncertainty without saying, I am uncertainty. You may face scarcity without saying, I am scarcity. You may face rejection without saying, I am rejection. You may face a closed door without saying, I am permanently shut out. The condition stands before awareness. Awareness remains capable of choosing how it will meet the condition. This is freedom at the root. Suppose a wave rises upon the sea. The wave may be high. It may disturb the surface. It may strike the shore with force. Yet the sea is not reduced to the wave. If the sea could speak, it would not say, I am only this movement. It would contain the movement and remain greater than it. Doubt is a wave. Awareness is the sea. You may feel the wave. You may not enjoy it. You may prefer calm water. But the wave does not become the whole ocean because it rises. Let the mind become spacious enough to contain one uncertain movement without naming the whole self from it. Doubt may be present, but I do not call doubt I. Perhaps say it once inwardly, not as a charm, as a clarification. Doubt may be present, but I do not call doubt I. Feel what is not being done. You are not attacking doubt. You are not ashamed of it. You are not demanding that it vanish. You are not promising never to feel it again. You are simply refusing identification. A traveler may enter a cold room and say, the room is cold. They need not say, I am coldness itself. They may put on a garment, light a fire, or leave. The condition can be addressed because the person remains distinct from it. So too with doubt. When you call yourself doubt, you cannot move without feeling that you are betraying yourself. When you recognize doubt as a state, movement becomes natural. You may comfort the body. You may revise the conclusion. You may enter another imaginal position. You may seek wisdom. You may rest. The state no longer possesses the dignity of essence. Perhaps the old identity protests. It says, but I have always been doubtful. Listen carefully. Always is one of the words habit uses to imitate eternity. You may have occupied the state for many years. Many years are not eternity. You may have responded from it since childhood. Childhood is not the source of being. You may have been trained by disappointment to expect disappointment. Training is not essence. That which was learned may become unfamiliar through another practice. The sacred name existed before the training. I am. The child heard fear from others. I am remained open. The child experienced criticism. I am remained open. The child joined a meaning to the event. The meaning became a state. The state became familiar. But awareness remained beneath it all, available now. You do not need to return to the past and repair every moment before choosing a new identity. You may revise later what needs revision. For now, recognize that the one aware of the entire history is present beyond any single chapter. I am. The history appears within awareness. Awareness is not trapped inside the history. This may be difficult to feel if the body carries old reactions strongly. Do not force the body to agree immediately. Let it hear another possibility. A sensation can be old without being true of the future. A reaction can be familiar without being sacred. A thought can be automatic without being chosen now. The body may tremble while awareness remains free. The chest may tighten while awareness remains free. The mind may question while awareness remains free. Freedom does not require perfect calm before it begins. It begins in the distinction. This is present. It is not what I am. Perhaps you feel sadness. Sadness is present. I am. Perhaps you feel disappointment. Disappointment is present. I am. Perhaps you feel fear that your desire will never come. Fear is present. I am. You are not using I am to push the feeling away. You are allowing the feeling to exist without turning it into identity. This kindness may permit the feeling to move more easily than force ever could. A feeling held as identity must defend its existence. A feeling seen as experience may complete its movement. When fear is called I, any release of fear can feel like loss of self. When fear is called a passing state, release becomes safe. This is why some people cling unconsciously to painful identities. The state has become their name. Without it, they do not know who they are. The worried one knows their duties. The rejected one knows what to watch for. The struggling one knows how to earn value. The doubtful one knows how to question. The old identity provides occupation. To release it can feel like stepping into an empty room. Let the room be empty. You need not fill it at once. I am. This is enough identity for the moment. You are not nothing. You are unconditioned awareness before selection. The former state may ask, who are you without me? You may answer, I am. Who are you without constant worry? I am. Who are you without the story of rejection? I am. Who are you without being the one who must prove? I am. The answer may sound unfinished to the reasoning mind. To being, it is complete. You exist before your role. You exist before your wound. You exist before your defense. You exist before your doubt. And because you exist before the state, you may select what shall follow the sacred name. This selection will deepen as the night continues. But do not hurry into it yet. The old names are being loosened. Let the sacred name rest alone for a while. I am. Perhaps the voice of doubt says, but what are you? No answer is required. I am. It asks, what will happen? No answer is required. I am. It asks, how do you know? Being does not need evidence to know that it is. I am. The simplicity may become restful. Every additional description can be put down. I am not required to be the wise one tonight. I am. I am not required to be the strong one tonight. I am. I am not required to be the one who has solved everything. I am. I am not required to be certain. I am. This does not mean uncertainty has received the name. It means being is allowed to rest without decoration. The night may carry the unfinished declaration. I am need not become I am doubtful. It need not become I am trying. It need not become I am waiting. Let it remain pure. I am. Feel how doubt has nothing upon which to fasten itself when the sentence remains open. It may offer an adjective, uncertain. You do not take it. It may offer a history, forgotten. You do not wear it. It may offer a judgment, incapable. You leave it upon the table. It may offer a permanent role, the one for whom nothing works. You do not enter the costume. Awareness remains unclothed by the old state. I am. This is not passivity. It is preparation at the deepest point. A painter cleans the surface before placing another image. A musician allows silence before choosing the note. A court clears the room before another case begins. You are making the sacred name available for conscious selection. The old conditions may continue standing nearby, but they no longer possess automatic access. You are becoming deliberate. Perhaps tomorrow the phrase, I am worried, begins to form. You may not need to forbid it. You may hear it and make a small correction. Worry is present. I am aware. Or simply, I feel worried. Notice the difference. I feel worried acknowledges experience. I am worried may easily become identity. The language is not magic in itself, but it can help you remember the distinction. You are not required to monitor every sentence anxiously. Use this only as a gentle aid. The deeper movement is inward. Condition is experienced. Being remains free. Perhaps you say, I am confused. Pause. Confusion is present. Awareness knows confusion. Awareness itself is not confused about its own existence. I am. Perhaps you say, I am forgotten. Pause. Someone may have failed to remember, respond, or recognize. This is painful. But being is not erased by another person's attention. I am. Perhaps you say, I am not capable. Pause. A task may exceed present skill. A moment may reveal a limitation. But present ability is not the whole potential of awareness. I am learning. I am available to another capacity. Or simply, I am. The sacred name need not be immediately clothed in the largest opposite. You do not have to jump from I am incapable to I am masterful if the body resists. First withdraw the false finality. This event does not define all that I am. This ability may grow. This state may change. Awareness remains open. The removal of the old name creates room for a more natural one. You will learn to choose from relief rather than pressure. For now, the freedom from false naming is enough. Doubt borrowed the sacred name. It wore it for so long that you thought the garment and the wearer were one. Now you see the seam. You see where I am ends and the condition begins. You may separate them gently. No tearing, no violence. The garment may be removed. The wearer remains. Imagine placing the old garment upon a chair beside you. The garment of uncertainty, the garment of being forgotten, the garment of incapacity, the garment of perpetual disappointment. They may look convincing when worn. Upon the chair, they are only cloth, a shape without life. It was your being that animated them. It was your emotional occupancy that gave them movement. Without your presence, they cannot walk. They cannot speak. They cannot create another day. Let them rest upon the chair. You do not need to burn them. The old garments may remain as evidence of roles once played. You simply do not wear them into sleep. The body rests beneath no psychological uniform, no badge of failure, no cloak of rejection, no heavy coat of doubt, only being. I am. Perhaps another garment will later be chosen. Support, belonging, capability, peace, but not through haste. Let bare being feel safe. Some have worn struggle so long that ease feels like exposure. Let the night cover you. You are not exposed. You are being held without the old costume. The bed supports the body. The darkness requires no role. My voice asks for no performance. You may exist without proving. I am. Let the forehead release the labels it has been organizing. It does not need to decide whether you are successful or unsuccessful tonight. The eyes may remain closed upon all visible evidence. The jaw may stop speaking the old descriptions. The shoulders may no longer carry the identity of the one responsible for every outcome. The hands may release the garments. The chest may breathe as being rather than as worry. The abdomen may soften around the possibility that uncertainty does not own you. The legs may rest without carrying the role toward tomorrow. Doubt may be present. Perhaps one small question remains. Let it remain. You do not call it I. Fear may be present. Perhaps the body still guards. Let it guard a little longer if it must. You do not call it I. Sadness may be present. Let it receive kindness. You do not call it I. Fatigue may be present. Let it lead towards sleep. You do not call it I. The condition is known. The sacred name remains free. I am. This is the authority doubt was borrowing. The authority has returned to its source, not with noise, not through conquest, through recognition. The old sentence may begin to form, and then lose its ending. I am. Let it remain there. I am. No need to complete. I am. The old adjective waits. You do not reach for it. I am. The room grows quiet. I am. The night becomes deeper. I am. Awareness remains when the words fade. Perhaps soon you will no longer hear the sentence distinctly. That is well. Being does not require the phrase to remain conscious. The words point toward the fact. When the pointer disappears, the fact remains. You are. Doubt appears within being. It does not define being. You are. Fear moves within being. It does not become being. You are. The old identity may call. Being is not required to answer. You are. And from this clear, quiet awareness, another identity may later be selected without force, without argument, and without granting doubt the sacred name it could never truly possess on its own. Doubt may be present, but I do not call doubt I. Let that understanding become softer now. Doubt may be present, I remain. A question may be present, I remain. A sensation may be present, I remain. A memory may be present, I remain. The state changes, I remain. The words fade, I remain. I am. I am. And from that quiet, unconditioned awareness, you may begin to notice the character that doubt has been playing. For doubt has not merely appeared as an occasional thought. Over time, it may have become a role with a voice, a role with a posture, a role with familiar entrances and familiar exits, a role that knows what to say when a letter arrives, when a person delays, when a plan changes, when the night becomes still, and when the future cannot yet be seen. The doubting self has rehearsed its part carefully. It knows how to lean toward disappointment before disappointment is present. It knows how to lower the voice when speaking of hope. It knows how to smile cautiously so that joy will not become too visible. It knows how to examine a kindness for hidden danger. It knows how to enter a peaceful moment and whisper that peace cannot last. It has repeated these movements so many times that they may no longer feel like acting. They may feel like personality. You may say, "This is simply the way I am." But I tell you, the way you have learned to perform is not the whole of what you are. A role may be deeply rehearsed without becoming the actor's essence. An actor may portray a beggar so completely that every gesture expresses need. He may stoop as he walks. He may look at the floor. His voice may carry the expectation of refusal. He may wear the garment so convincingly that those watching forget the man beneath it. Yet when the curtain closes, the beggar does not leave the stage by himself. The actor leaves. The posture may straighten. The voice may change. The garment may be removed. The man who seemed poor upon the stage may walk into another room untouched by the poverty of the role. The character was real as an experience. It was not the actor's essence. So it is with the doubting self. You have experienced the role. You may have performed it faithfully. You may know every line, but you are the actor, not the character. This distinction is not an invitation to pretend that the role has caused no pain. A long performance can tire the body. A tragic character can leave an emotional trace even after the curtain falls. A costume worn for many years may feel strange when removed. The skin may expect its weight. The shoulders may retain its shape. The voice may continue repeating a line after the scene has ended. This does not mean the role is your essence. It means the role has been rehearsed. Naturalness belongs to rehearsal. Whatever is repeated becomes easier to enter. The actor who has played the same character for years can step into it with one gesture. A certain word is spoken, and the body remembers. A certain situation appears, and the old character enters before awareness has chosen. A delayed reply becomes the cue. The doubting self steps onto the stage. An unexpected expense becomes the cue. The doubting self knows its entrance. A physical sensation becomes the cue. The old role takes its position. Someone changes their tone. The curtain rises. The character appears. And because the entrance is swift, you believe it is you. But speed is not identity. Automatic movement is not essence. A practiced role can enter quickly. That is all. Perhaps tonight you can observe the performance without becoming entirely absorbed in it. The character says, "I knew this would happen." Notice the line. The character says, "I should never have hoped." Notice the line. The character says, "Nothing good remains." Notice the line. The character says, "I must prepare for the worst." Notice the posture that accompanies it. Perhaps the chest contracts. Perhaps the eyes become inwardly narrow. Perhaps the shoulders move forward, as though protecting the heart. Perhaps the breathing becomes shallow. The role is not only language. It has a body. It has a rhythm. It has a way of occupying space. The doubting self may sit differently from the trusting self. It may walk differently. It may listen differently. It may hear a pause as rejection. It may hear advice as criticism. It may hear uncertainty as doom. It may hear another person's success as evidence of its own exclusion. Every role interprets the play according to its character. Give two actors the same letter. One plays the supported person. The other plays the abandoned person. The words upon the page may be identical. The first reads possibility. The second reads warning. The letter did not create the whole response. The character reading it gave it meaning. This is why changing the role is deeper than trying to change every scene. You may spend a lifetime rearranging the scenery while entering as the same character. You may change the room, the relationship, the occupation, the city, the plan, the circumstances, and still hear the same lines spoken from within. What if this does not last? What if I lose it? What if I fail again? What if I am exposed? What if I am not enough? The scenery changes. The actor puts on the same costume. Then life appears to repeat itself. Not because the world is mocking you, because the role is interpreting each new stage through an old script. Tonight, I am not asking you to destroy the script. You do not need to gather every page and burn it. You do not need to hate the character. You do not need to enter the stage and attack the one who doubts. That would only create another drama. A character at war with a character remains within the play. You must remember the place behind the curtain, the quiet place before the entrance, the place where the costume has not yet been put on, the place where the actor waits without being any character in particular. Go there now, not physically, in awareness. Return behind the scenes. The stage may continue for a moment, the lights may remain, the old voice may still be speaking, but you withdraw inwardly from total identification. You remember, I am the one aware of the role. I am the one who can watch the character enter. I am the one who can hear the line before deciding whether to speak it. I am the one who wore the costume. I am not the costume. This remembering is the doorway backstage. You do not need to know exactly where the door is. The moment you notice the role as a role, you are already standing near it. The moment you say, "This is the doubting character speaking," you are no longer completely upon the stage. The moment you feel the old posture, and do not call it your final nature, the curtain begins to close. Let the old scene continue without your full participation. Perhaps the mind is presenting a familiar future. You see yourself disappointed. You see the conversation going badly. You see the door remaining closed. The character has begun performing. Do not shout at the scene. Do not tear down the scenery. Step backward inwardly. This is a rehearsal from the old script. That sentence alone may loosen the spell. A rehearsal, not prophecy. A role, not essence. A scene, not destiny. The mind may continue showing the image, but you have remembered the actor. The image now appears upon a stage, rather than inside a prison. There is space around it. There is a curtain. There is a backstage. There is another possible role. Perhaps the doubting character has served a purpose. At one time, it may have helped you feel prepared. It may have learned to enter before disappointment, so that surprise would hurt less. It may have spoken cautiously, because hope once seemed dangerous. It may have lowered expectation, because the heart had become tired. It may have become skilled at watching, because trust had once been broken. Do not despise the character. It was written from experience. It learned its lines from moments you survived. It may have protected something tender. But a role written for one season does not need to play forever. A coat made for winter does not become the body merely because it provided warmth. When the season changes, the coat may be removed. The doubting self may have been useful as protection. Now the protection has become confinement. It guards the door even when danger is absent. It rejects gifts because loss is possible. It refuses to rest because uncertainty remains. It warns against love because love cannot be controlled. It warns against beginning because beginning does not guarantee success. It warns against trust because trust cannot promise that no pain will ever come. The role has forgotten that protection is not the same as life. A guard may keep a palace secure, yet if the doors never open, the palace becomes a prison. The doubting self has guarded you from disappointment by guarding you from full participation. It says, do not hope too much, do not love too openly, do not expect support, do not believe the door will open, do not rest until proof arrives. The character believes that constant caution preserves you, but the actor is larger than the character's fear. The actor can choose another relation to the play. You can enter a scene without surrendering your essence to its outcome. You can love without making another person the owner of your being. You can begin without demanding that the whole journey be guaranteed. You can rest without knowing every event of tomorrow. You can occupy a fulfilled state without pretending that uncertainty never appears. This is not carelessness. It is freedom from one role. Imagine the dressing room now. Quiet. A mirror. A chair. A low light. The stage is beyond the wall. But for a moment you are not performing. The costume of the doubting self hangs upon you. Perhaps it is heavy at the shoulders. Perhaps its collar is too tight. Perhaps the sleeves have become worn from years of use. Upon the garment are stitched old phrases. I must be careful. I will probably be disappointed. I should not expect too much. People always leave. Nothing comes easily to me. I cannot trust myself. The garment has carried these words so long that you may have stopped seeing them. Look now without judgment. This is what I have worn, not what I am. Reach inwardly toward the first fastening. You do not need to tear it open. Unfasten it gently. Perhaps the first fastening is the belief that every doubtful thought must be obeyed. Release it. A thought may speak without becoming a command. Perhaps the next is the belief that fear protects you. Release it. Fear may alert, but wisdom may decide. Perhaps the next is the belief that history defines identity. Release it. History describes what has been lived. It does not exhaust what may be lived. Perhaps the next is the belief that uncertainty means danger. Release it. Uncertainty means the next scene is not yet visible. It does not announce the ending, one fastening after another. No hurry. The costume begins to loosen. You may feel the body beneath it, the shoulders beneath the role, the breath beneath the performance, the simple being beneath the practiced posture. I am. The garment may still hang upon you. You do not need to remove it completely tonight. Perhaps only the collar loosens. Perhaps the shoulders receive more room. Perhaps the chest breathes without the script pressing against it. A small release is real. You are not required to transform dramatically. The doubting self may still appear tomorrow, but you will begin recognizing the costume. You may feel yourself putting it on. A circumstance occurs. The hand reaches for the familiar sleeve. The old line rises. Then awareness remembers. This is the role. I do not need to dress for this scene in the same way. You may choose another garment. Not yet the garment of absolute confidence, if that feels theatrical. Perhaps the garment of openness. Perhaps the garment of present dignity. Perhaps the garment of quiet support. Perhaps the garment of one who does not know yet, and does not condemn himself for not knowing. A new role becomes natural in stages. At first, you may feel like an actor learning unfamiliar lines. You may say, I am supported, and the body does not know how to stand. You may imagine being chosen, and the old character waits in the wings. You may enter peace, and part of you expects the director to stop the scene and say it is not convincing. Let the unfamiliarity be present. The first rehearsal of a new character is rarely effortless. The actor may need to discover how the character breathes, how the character receives good news, how the character responds to delay, how the character rests, how the character thinks when no one is watching. This discovery is not falseness, it is creation. You have called the old role natural because it was rehearsed. Give the new role the same kindness of rehearsal. Do not demand that it feel completely true on the first night. Let it feel possible, then familiar, then ordinary. Naturalness is not proof of eternal truth. It is the result of repeated occupancy. The old doubting self feels natural because you have returned to it many times. The new self may become just as natural through gentle return. Perhaps the new character is not one who never questions. That would be another rigid role. Perhaps it is the one who is not defined by questions. This character may hear uncertainty and remain centered. It may see difficulty and retain dignity. It may make a mistake without collapsing into identity. It may receive love without immediately preparing for loss. It may rest before every answer is visible. How does such a character sit? Not perfectly upright, with forced confidence. Perhaps simply without curling around the future. How does such a character breathe? Not dramatically. Perhaps with no need to hold the breath while waiting. How does such a character hear silence? Not as immediate rejection, perhaps as silence. How does such a character meet delay? Not with delight, perhaps, but without turning it into a verdict. How does such a character speak inwardly? Not with grand speeches, perhaps with simple statements. This moment does not define everything. I remain capable of another view. I do not need to become the old role again. These lines are quieter than the old drama. The doubting character is often theatrical. It announces disaster. It predicts endings. It declares that one event reveals the whole future. The new role may be almost invisible. It does not need to dominate the stage. It remains present. It listens. It chooses. It does not give every scene permanent meaning. Perhaps the new role feels less like acting and more like ceasing to act. The old self performs constant vigilance. The new self rests. The old self performs preparation for pain. The new self allows the moment to remain incomplete. The old self performs unworthiness. The new self stops presenting a case against being. The old self performs control. The new self permits the bridge to remain unseen. You may discover that the deepest role is one of simplicity. I am. No elaborate costume. No tragic history carried in every gesture. No need to prove confidence to the audience. The true actor does not need applause from the scene. The actor knows the scene is temporary. A character may be praised. A character may be criticized. A character may win. A character may lose. The actor remains capable of another role. This is the freedom you carry into human experience. The world may respond to the role you occupy, but no response is final concerning what awareness may next assume. You are not condemned to one character. You are the creative presence capable of playing many states. You have been the fearful one. You have been the hopeful one. You have been the rejected one. You have been the loved one. You have been the struggling one. You have been the supported one. Perhaps in different hours, all these roles have passed through you. Which one is your essence? None of them completely. Your essence is the awareness that wore them. This does not make human experience meaningless. It makes change possible. If the role were the essence, transformation would be impossible. But because the role is assumed, it may be released. Because the costume was put on, it may be taken off. Because the script was learned, another script may be learned. Because the posture was practiced, another posture may become familiar. Do not let the length of the performance deceive you. A man may play one role for 30 years and remove the costume in a single evening. The body may still remember it the next day. The old lines may still arise, but the recognition has occurred. I am not confined to this character. That recognition changes the quality of every return. Before, when doubt appeared, you said, "Here I am again." Now you may say, "The old role has entered again." Do you feel the difference? "Here I am" gives the character the sacred name. The old role has entered, preserves the actor. Before you said, "I am failing." Now, the character of failure is speaking. Before, "I am rejected." Now, an old scene of rejection is being performed. Before, "I am helpless." Now, the costume of helplessness has been put on. The new language is not meant to make you detached from responsibility. It is meant to restore choice. Once you see the costume, you can ask whether it belongs to the scene. Perhaps a practical difficulty appears. Do you need the costume of helplessness to respond wisely? No. Perhaps another person disappoints you. Do you need the full costume of abandonment in order to recognize what happened? No. Perhaps a plan fails. Do you need to perform the entire tragedy of incapacity? No. The event may deserve a response. The old character is not required. You may respond as awareness clothed in dignity. This is the creative use of identity. You do not deny the scene. You choose who enters it. Life may present an unexpected stage. You may not control every prop, every entrance, or every line spoken by another. But you can become conscious of the character you bring. You can ask, "Who am I being in relation to this?" Not, "How do I force the scene to obey?" But, "From which self do I meet it?" The same scene changes under another identity. A delay met by abandonment becomes suffering. A delay met by support becomes an interval. A mistake met by incapacity becomes a sentence. A mistake met by growth becomes instruction. Silence met by rejection becomes torment. Silence met by self-possession becomes space. The stage has not yet changed, the role has. And because the role changes, the meaning, action, and possible continuation begin to change. This is not mere positive thinking. The doubting self may think many positive thoughts while remaining in costume. It says, perhaps everything will be well, but the voice trembles because the role expects disaster. The change occurs when you return backstage and choose the one who speaks. Do not merely improve the character's lines. Remember the actor. A beggar repeating the words of a king may still feel like a beggar pretending. The actor who consciously assumes the king's role begins to discover another posture, another expectation, another relation to the room. Yet even the king is a role. Do not become trapped by the grandeur of the new costume. The source remains, I am. You are not seeking a more impressive prison. You are selecting a state that serves the life you desire to express. Support, belonging, freedom, capability, peace. These may become garments worn naturally. But beneath them, awareness remains free. This freedom prevents fear of losing the state. You may occasionally forget. You may put on the old costume. You may speak an old line. Nothing eternal has been damaged. Return backstage. Remove the garment again. Remember the actor. This rhythm is compassionate. It does not demand a flawless performance. It does not punish missed lines. It does not declare the whole play ruined because one scene resembled the old one. You are learning conscious assumption. Learning contains return. An actor may rehearse a scene many times. The first attempt may carry the habits of another role. The second may become freer. The third may reveal a gesture that feels true. The character gradually becomes inhabited. You too may rehearse another self in imagination, not with strain, not before a cruel judge. In the privacy of consciousness, you may imagine receiving a letter without fear. You may imagine hearing a beloved voice without searching for withdrawal. You may imagine waking without immediately putting on yesterday's burden. You may imagine looking upon a difficulty as one who remains supported. These small rehearsals teach the body another role. You need not construct an enormous drama. A single ordinary moment is enough. How would the supported self open the eyes in the morning? How would the loved self hear their own name? How would the capable self approach one task? How would the free self breathe while the road remains unfinished? Do not answer intellectually. Let the actor discover the movement. Perhaps the shoulders release. Perhaps the face softens. Perhaps the breath no longer waits. Perhaps nothing visible changes, but the inner line becomes simpler. I do not need to fear this moment. That may be enough rehearsal for tonight. The doubting self may be waiting in the wings. It knows the old cues. Do not banish it violently. Let it wait. You are not required to call it onto the stage. A cue may occur, a memory, a sound, a question. The old character begins to move. Awareness may say, not this scene. No hatred, no panic, not this scene. The character may return behind the curtain. Or perhaps it takes one step onto the stage before you remember. That too is well. You may pause the performance. You do not need to finish every old scene once it begins. An argument may stop midway. A fearful prediction may remain incomplete. A posture may soften before the line ends. You can leave a script unfinished. This is a power many overlook. They believe that once fear begins, it must be followed to its conclusion. Once the mind imagines a difficulty, it must imagine the disaster. Once the old role enters, it must perform the whole act. No. The curtain may close at any moment. The scene may end without explanation. The actor may step away. You do not owe the old story an ending. Perhaps tonight you hear the first line. Something will go wrong. Do not speak the second. I knew I could not trust life. Let the scene end after the first line. Silence. The curtain closes. Backstage. I am. Perhaps the first image appears. A door remains shut. Do not build the entire future behind it. Let the image fade unfinished. Backstage. I am. Perhaps the body contracts. Do not add the identity. Fear is present. The actor remains. I am. This is how the old role weakens. Not because it is attacked, because fewer scenes are completed, fewer lines receive your voice, fewer costumes remain on the body throughout the night. The role loses rehearsal. What is not rehearsed becomes less natural. What is gently rehearsed in its place becomes more available. You may feel compassion for the old character as it fades. It carried many burdens. It believed vigilance was devotion. It believed worry was responsibility. It believed self-doubt was humility. It believed expecting pain was wisdom. It believed that if it stopped performing, life would become dangerous. Let it see that the actor is safe backstage. The theater does not collapse when one character rests. The stage remains. The play continues. Another state may enter. The old character may sit quietly in the wings, no longer responsible for every scene. Perhaps it is tired. Let it sleep. You do not need to kill the character. You may retire the role. Place the costume upon its hook. Straighten the garment gently. Thank it for the season in which it believed it served you. Then step away. You do not need to know whether you will ever wear it again. Tonight, you need not wear it into sleep. Feel what remains without the costume. The body beneath the expectation. The breath beneath the script. The awareness beneath the character. I am. No audience is watching. You do not have to appear confident. No critic waits to judge the performance. You do not have to speak the perfect line. No director demands that you change instantly. You may sit in the quiet dressing room of consciousness. The stage grows distant. The old role is hanging nearby. You are not wearing it. Perhaps the garment still carries your shape. That does not mean it is attached. Perhaps the old lines still echo. That does not mean they are being spoken now. Perhaps the body remembers the posture. Let it gradually learn another. The shoulders need not remain curved around disappointment. The chest need not protect itself from possibility. The hands need not clutch the script. The jaw need not rehearse the argument. The forehead need not anticipate the next scene. No cue must be obeyed tonight. You may miss your entrance. You may let the old drama continue without you. The lights may rise upon an empty stage. Doubt expected you to appear. You remain backstage. The scene cannot proceed in the same way without your participation. The scenery may be present. The old problem may be present. The memory may be present. But the character is not fully inhabited. This absence is creative. You are withdrawing life from the old performance. Do not underestimate quiet non-participation. A role survives by being played. A script survives by being spoken. A state survives by being occupied. When occupancy is withdrawn, the form may continue for a while, like an empty theater retaining the warmth of the audience after everyone has gone. Let the warmth fade. You need not cool the room by force. Time and non-participation will do their work. Rest backstage. I am. The old character is a role. I am the actor. The old posture is a rehearsal. I am the awareness that may choose another movement. The old voice is a line. I am the one who may remain silent. The old identity is a costume. I am the one who may remove it. Let these distinctions become softer. Role, actor, costume, awareness. The words may blur as sleep approaches. That is well. Perhaps you remember only the feeling of removing something heavy. A coat slipping from the shoulders. A collar opening. A mask placed upon a table. A script closed before the final page. A lamp dimmed in the dressing room. The stage beyond the wall becomes quiet. No applause, no condemnation, only rest. You do not need to perform the doubting self while sleeping. You do not need to rehearse tomorrow's difficulties. You do not need to enter the scene in advance. The curtain is closed. The costume may remain upon its hook. The actor may rest without a role. I am. Before the character, I am. After the character, I am. Between scenes, I am. When the old line is forgotten, I am. When the new line has not yet been chosen, I am. This is enough. Tonight you may not know exactly who you are becoming. You need only know that you are not confined to the role that always expects difficulty. The old character may have been convincing. It may have been practiced. It may have received many years of your life. But duration does not turn performance into essence. The role was learned. The role was worn. The role was repeated. And now, gently, the role may be removed, not through violence, not through shame, not through pretending the past never occurred. Through remembrance, I am the actor, I am the awareness, I am the one who chooses what state shall receive my life. Let the doubting character rest behind the curtain. Let the old script remain closed. Let the costume grow lighter upon its hook. You do not need it tonight. You are not entering the stage of tomorrow now. You are resting in the quiet place before every entrance, the place where no scene has yet decided who you must be, the place where being remains open, the place where another role may be accepted without struggle, the place where you are not the doubtful voice, not the fearful posture, not the familiar performance. You are the presence that noticed them all, and that presence is free. And now, as you rest within the scene, rather than watching it from a distance, I would give you a question that opens the door without forcing it. It is not a question meant to produce a clever answer. It is not a question for the reasoning mind to examine throughout the night. It is not another task to complete before you are permitted to sleep. It is a quiet question, asked only to reveal what the fulfilled state has already released. If the matter were already settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? Let the question enter slowly. If the matter were already settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? Do not hurry to decide what you would possess. Do not immediately construct the house, the amount, the conversation, the letter, the journey, or the visible result. Begin with what would disappear. What inner labor would become unnecessary? What tension would lose its occupation? What question would no longer require an answer? What performance would come to an end? Many have tried to enter fulfillment by manufacturing a powerful emotion. They have strained to feel joy. They have attempted to produce excitement. They have demanded that the heart respond dramatically before they could believe the imaginal act was complete. But fulfillment is often discovered not through the addition of intensity, but through the removal of necessity. When a burden is set down, you may not shout. You may simply notice that the hands are empty. When a long journey ends, you may not leap with excitement. You may sit. When an important question has been answered, you may not repeat the answer all night. You may stop asking. The absence of the old activity becomes the sign of the new state. If the matter were already settled, perhaps the need to check would no longer be necessary. You would not inspect every hour for evidence. You would not awaken and immediately search the outer world for confirmation. You would not examine each word another person spoke, asking whether it contained the answer. You would not turn every coincidence into a sign, or every silence into a warning. You would not repeatedly open the same inward door to see whether fulfillment remained inside. You do not continually check whether the bed beneath you still exists. You rest upon it. You do not ask the floor to prove its support before each step. You walk from the assumption that it will hold you. Possession is often quiet because it no longer requires inspection. The one who checks continually is not always seeking information. Often, checking is an act of identity. It says, I am still the one who does not know. I am still the one waiting outside. I am still the one who must discover whether permission has been granted. The eyes may find favorable evidence for a moment. Relief arrives. Then the identity asks again, is it still true? Has something changed? Was I mistaken? The act of checking restores the one who waits. If the matter were already settled, the outer world could still be observed. You could still read the letter when it comes. You could still look at the account. You could still listen to another person. You could still attend wisely to circumstances. But the observation would no longer carry the desperation of one searching for identity. You would look at information. You would not ask information to name you. Feel the difference. Checking says, tell me who I am. Observation says, show me what is present. Checking bends toward the world, as though the world possesses the answer to being. Observation remains centered and receives the report. If the matter was settled within you, perhaps you would still notice what happens, but you would no longer need each event to rescue you from uncertainty. So do not forbid yourself to look tomorrow. That would create another struggle. Instead, release the need hidden beneath the looking. You may see without pleading. You may hear without placing your worth in every sound. You may observe without surrendering the throne. If the matter were already settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? Perhaps the urgency to convince would disappear. You would no longer rehearse explanations for those who do not understand. You would not need everyone to agree that your desire is possible. You would not need to defend imagination before a court of skeptical voices. You would not need to persuade another person that you deserve their kindness. You would not need to make a long argument for your own worth. The desire accepted inwardly does not require public debate. A person who knows their name does not spend the day convincing strangers that the name belongs to them. They may correct an error when correction is useful, but their existence does not depend upon universal agreement. The fulfilled state may speak, it may explain, it may ask, it may negotiate, it may express preference clearly, but it does not speak in order to manufacture being through another person's consent. The urgency is gone. Perhaps you have been trying to convince life itself. You have repeated your desire as though the universe had not heard. You have raised the emotional volume. You have made the request more detailed. You have wondered whether the words were sufficiently powerful. You have behaved as one standing before a closed office, knocking upon the door again and again because no answer has yet been heard. But the creative act does not depend upon shouting across distance. The true act is the assumption of identity. When the identity is accepted, repetition may continue as a gentle enjoyment, but it is no longer pleading. It becomes remembrance. There is a difference between repeating words because you fear they were not received and returning to a state because it is where you choose to live. The first is persuasion. The second is occupancy. If the matter were settled, you would not need to convince consciousness of what consciousness had already accepted. You would not need to shout at the soil after the seed was placed within it. You would allow the soil to remain closed. You would understand that concealment is not absence. The seed disappears from sight because it has entered the place where visible growth begins. The anxious gardener digs it up. Was it planted deeply enough? Has it changed? Is the shell beginning to open? The gardener calls this concern. But every inspection interrupts the very stillness through which development occurs. Let the seed remain unseen. You do not need to persuade the earth. You do not need to explain the flower to the seed. The pattern is carried within the act of planting. If the matter were already settled, perhaps preparation for disappointment would no longer be necessary. This preparation may have seemed wise. You may have believed that expecting pain would reduce its force. You may have thought that hope must always be balanced by a vision of failure. You may have prepared a second story in case the first did not occur. While imagining love, you prepared for abandonment. While imagining success, you prepared the explanation for failure. While imagining financial relief, you prepared to endure another loss. While imagining freedom, you prepared to remain confined. You placed one foot in the desired state and kept the other within the familiar one, believing that divided loyalty would protect you. But the body felt the division. The mind spoke of fulfillment. The nervous system rehearsed disappointment. The words said, "Perhaps it is done." The posture said, "Remain ready for the old answer." Preparation for disappointment does not always reduce future pain. It creates present pain in advance. You suffer the event before knowing whether the event will occur. You call the suffering prudence. You call the contraction realism. You call the refusal to rest intelligence. But true wisdom prepares you to respond to what is present. It does not require you to live emotionally inside every unwanted possibility. If a difficult event arises, the intelligence needed to meet it will arise in that hour. You do not become wiser by exhausting tomorrow's strength tonight. The fulfilled state does not say that nothing unexpected can ever occur. It says that being need not live in permanent preparation for injury. This is a profound release. You may still make practical preparations. You may place the papers in order. You may save wisely. You may ask a necessary question. You may take sensible precautions. But the inner self need not become the tragedy it is preparing to prevent. The hands may attend to life while the heart remains free. If the matter were already settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? Perhaps constant vigilance would become unnecessary. You would no longer stand guard over the desire throughout every hour. You would not believe that a moment of inattention could cause fulfillment to escape. You would not fear that one doubtful thought had opened the gate to ruin. You would not inspect the mind for forbidden movements. You would not treat consciousness as a dangerous room filled with objects that might explode if touched incorrectly. Many have turned imagination into another form of watchfulness. They begin with the desire for freedom and create a prison of mental supervision. Did I think the right thing? Did I feel the right feeling? Did I react correctly? Did I remain in the state long enough? Did I accidentally imagine the opposite? Has doubt damaged the seed? This is not rest. This is the old guard wearing a new uniform. The subject has changed. The state of vigilance remains. You may call the activity spiritual, yet the body still receives the instruction that danger is near. The fulfilled state does not monitor itself constantly. It lives. It may wander in thought. It may encounter a difficult moment. It may feel sadness, fatigue, or uncertainty. But beneath these movements, it does not believe that being is so fragile that one passing state destroys the whole direction. A home does not cease to be yours because you walk into the garden. Possession does not vanish because attention moves elsewhere. You may return. You may forget and return. You may react and return. You may dream and return. Return is not proof of failure. It is the natural movement of consciousness selecting a home. Let vigilance rest. You do not need to stand beside the door of the desired state with a weapon. No enemy is trying to steal it while you sleep. The old thought may knock. It may even enter for a moment. This does not make it the owner. It is a visitor. The owner remains the identity you repeatedly accept as natural. If the matter were already settled, perhaps the need to hurry would disappear. You would not race against time in imagination. You would not count the days as evidence against yourself. You would not believe that the desired state becomes less available with every passing hour. You would understand that outer sequence and inner occupancy are not the same. The bridge may unfold over time. Identity is chosen now. Hurry says, I must reach the end before I am allowed to become the one who has arrived. Assumption says, I become the one who has arrived inwardly, and from that state I move through whatever sequence remains. The body experiences hurry as distance. Even while repeating that the desire is fulfilled, hurry confesses that fulfillment is far away. The chest leans forward. The breath becomes narrow. Thought jumps ahead. The present becomes an obstacle to be crossed, rather than the only place where the state may be selected. If the matter were settled, perhaps you would still prefer that outer movement occur soon. Preference is human. But preference would no longer become panic. You would not turn every passing day into a personal accusation. You would not say, another day has passed, therefore I am forgotten. You would say, another day has passed, and I remain free to occupy the state from which tomorrow is met. The clock measures sequence. It does not measure worth. It does not decide whether consciousness is permitted to change. It does not determine what identities are available. Let the clock perform its small function. Do not place it upon the throne. If the matter were already settled, perhaps the need to force feeling would disappear. You would not squeeze the heart for joy. You would not demand that peace arrive as a great wave. You would not repeat a phrase while anxiously asking whether the body believes it. You would understand that the fulfilled state may feel ordinary, perhaps even neutral. The absence of fear may not appear as ecstasy. It may appear as nothing in particular. A quiet breath, a mind no longer circling the same subject, an ability to think of something else, a willingness to let the eyes close. Do not mistake quietness for failure. The great burden of doubt has made you accustomed to intensity. Worry is intense. Longing is intense. Checking is intense. The effort to convince is intense. Then, when fulfillment approaches as simplicity, the mind says, surely this cannot be enough. It searches for a stronger emotion because strong emotion feels familiar. But possession may be so natural that the body scarcely comments upon it. You do not celebrate the air each time it enters the lungs, yet life depends upon it. You do not feel ecstasy each time the ground supports your feet, yet you trust it sufficiently to walk. The deepest assumptions often operate without emotional spectacle. They feel like facts. A fact does not beg to be felt more intensely. It quietly organizes experience. If the matter were settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? Perhaps the need to imagine perfectly would disappear. You would not become distressed because the picture was incomplete. You would not fear that a detail was missing. You would not ask whether the scene lasted a sufficient number of seconds. You would not turn imagination into craftsmanship judged by technical precision. A simple implication can carry the state, a voice, a touch, a familiar room. The knowledge that an old question is absent. The exact image matters less than the identity from which it is experienced. A blurred scene entered from fulfillment may be deeper than a vivid scene watched from longing. A single breath felt from security may impress the state more naturally than an elaborate palace viewed by one who feels excluded. Do not make visual clarity your God. Imagination includes feeling, meaning, sound, inner speech, posture, and the silent conviction of being. Some see clearly, some hear inwardly, some know without seeing or hearing. The doorway is not limited to one sense. The question opens it because it asks not for spectacle, but for consequence. What would no longer be necessary? The answer may be known bodily. The shoulders would no longer need to rise. The jaw would no longer prepare its defense. The eyes would no longer search behind closed lids. The breath would no longer pause at the edge of tomorrow. The hands would no longer hold the invisible rope by which you have tried to pull the future closer. The body may answer before the mind does. Let it answer through release. Perhaps only one small area softens. This may be the feeling of fulfillment available tonight. Do not demand more. The doorway need not be wide. You may pass through quietly. Perhaps the need to compare would no longer be necessary. You would not look at another person's life and use it to measure your own possibility. You would not ask why their road appears shorter. You would not treat another's fulfillment as evidence of your delay. You would not believe that life contains a limited number of doors, and that every person entering one has taken something from you. Comparison belongs to the self that does not know its own destination. It watches every traveler and wonders whether they are farther ahead. But roads differ, bridges differ, forms differ. One state may express itself through countless arrangements. The fact that another person receives does not reduce the creative capacity of consciousness. Their answer is not your rejection. Their timing is not your sentence. Their form is not the only form. If the matter were settled, you might see another's good and remain undisturbed, perhaps even pleased. Not because you force generosity, but because you no longer interpret abundance as a scarce invitation. A person at home does not envy every light in another house. They may admire it. Their own belonging remains. Let comparison rest tonight. You do not know the whole of another life. You do not need to know. You need not run their road. Return to your own inward destination. Perhaps the need to retell the old story would disappear. You would no longer explain the desire through the history of its absence. You would not begin every inward conversation with how long you have waited. You would not rehearse every disappointment to justify why fulfillment is important. The desired state does not require a biography of pain before it can be accepted. You may honor what you have lived. You may acknowledge the weariness, but you do not need to carry the whole archive into the new room. The old story says, "This is why I doubt." The fulfilled state says, "This history is not the address from which I now live." A person who has reached another shore does not need to drag the boat through every street as proof of the crossing. The boat served. Leave it by the water. The stories served as explanations. They may rest. You do not betray your former self by becoming free of its narrative. You do not dishonor pain by no longer using pain as identity. Indeed, you honor survival when you permit survival to become life. If the matter were already settled, perhaps the need to ask everyone for reassurance would become unnecessary. You might still share. You might still receive comfort. You might still seek wise counsel. But reassurance would not become food that must be supplied every hour. Another person could speak kindly, and you would receive it. Another could be uncertain, and their uncertainty would not become your name. The old state makes others responsible for continually restoring an identity that consciousness has not accepted for itself. Tell me I am loved. Tell me nothing is wrong. Tell me the future is safe. Tell me I did the right thing. Tell me again. Reassurance provides temporary relief because the deeper question remains open. Then another silence reopens it. The fulfilled state receives reassurance as a gift, not as life support. It may enjoy the words. It does not collapse without them. If the matter was settled, you would not need the whole world to repeat the answer. You would carry the answer inwardly, not as arrogance, as residence. This does not isolate you. It allows relationship without bondage. You may love another without making them the keeper of being. You may receive support without surrendering the source of identity. You may listen to counsel without placing awareness upon another person's throne. Perhaps the need to control the exact path would disappear. You would not insist that the answer arrive through one person, one institution, one opportunity, one date, or one sequence. You might retain a clear preference, but you would no longer believe that consciousness is limited to the route presently visible. The reasoning mind sees from its current elevation. It may identify one road. The deeper creative movement may contain turns that cannot yet be seen. To demand the entire path before accepting the end is to ask the beginning to contain the view of the summit. You do not require the seed to explain the branches. You accept the pattern and permit development. The desire may already contain tendencies toward its own fulfillment. It may move you toward a conversation. It may make one action feel natural. It may alter what you notice. It may reveal that something must be released. It may bring assistance through a channel you would not have selected consciously. You do not need to control every messenger. If the matter was settled, the how would no longer be an emergency. It might remain interesting. It might require participation, but it would not stand between you and rest. You would not say, "Unless I know how, I cannot accept the state." You would say, "The state may be accepted before its road is visible." This does not make you passive. It makes action less frantic. When the next step appears, you may take it. When no step appears, you need not invent movement to prove faith. Sometimes the natural action is to speak, sometimes to wait, sometimes to ask, sometimes to decline, sometimes to begin, sometimes to sleep. The fulfilled state is not tied to one outward behavior. It is the center from which behavior arises. If the matter were already settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? Perhaps the need to punish yourself would disappear. You would not accuse yourself for having doubted. You would not use an old reaction as evidence that you are incapable of change. You would not say, "I should have known this years ago." You would not turn spiritual understanding into another instrument of shame. Self-punishment belongs to the belief that pain improves identity. But identity is selected through assumption, not earned through cruelty. You may learn from a moment without striking the self with it. You may notice that you return to the old state and simply return again. The fulfilled self does not spend all its strength condemning the path it once walked. It recognizes the old road and chooses another. The one who has arrived does not stand at the destination insulting the traveler for having taken time. Every step belonged to the awakening. Even doubt revealed something. It showed you where identity had been placed. It revealed what questions controlled attention. It exposed the old posture. Now you know. Knowledge may become kindness. There is no need to hate the person you were. That person carried you here. Let them rest. If the matter were already settled, perhaps the need to become another person before receiving would disappear. You would no longer say, "When I am wiser, more beautiful, more disciplined, more confident, more spiritual, then I will be permitted." Growth may continue, but growth would not be the price of being loved by life. You would improve from worth, not toward it. You would learn from capability, not to obtain the right to call yourself capable. You would care for the body from love, not in order to earn love. You would develop skill because expression delights you, not because failure would erase your identity. The fulfilled state does not end development. It ends development as a plea for permission. This release may feel unfamiliar. Many have organized life around becoming enough. If enoughness is accepted now, what will motivate action? A different motive, expression, curiosity, contribution, enjoyment, wisdom, love. The fearful self believes only deficiency produces movement, but life moves trees toward light without shame. Life unfolds the flower without telling the bud it is unworthy. Growth is natural to being. You need not wound yourself into becoming. If the matter were settled, you could rest now and still grow tomorrow. Let that permission enter deeply. Rest does not end your progress. Rest may remove the resistance that made progress painful. You are not falling behind while sleeping. You are allowing the instrument to become quiet enough to receive another tone. Perhaps the question has already begun answering itself. If the matter was settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? Checking, convincing, preparing for disappointment. watching every thought, hurrying, forcing emotion, comparing, retelling the old story, seeking endless reassurance, controlling the road, punishing the self, proving worth. Do not turn these into a list you must eliminate. That would create another task. Choose nothing deliberately for a moment. Simply notice which burden feels most ready to be placed down. Perhaps it is checking. Let one check remain undone. Perhaps it is convincing. Let one imaginary argument end without victory. Perhaps it is preparing for disappointment. Let tomorrow remain unwritten. Perhaps it is vigilance. Let one thought pass without inspection. Perhaps it is the how. Let the bridge remain unseen. Perhaps it is self-punishment. Let this night contain no accusation. One burden is enough. You do not need to empty the whole house in a single hour. Place one object by the door. Feel the room become slightly more spacious. This space is not nothing. It is the emotional architecture of fulfillment. The old activity occupied the room. Its absence creates a place for another state. Relief is often simply the room left when unnecessary effort departs. You need not manufacture relief. Stop performing one unnecessary act. Relief may reveal itself. Suppose you have been holding a rope tightly. You believe the rope keeps the desired life connected to you. Your hands ache. The shoulders strain. The mind says, do not release it, or everything will be lost. But perhaps the rope is not connected to the desire at all. Perhaps it is tied to the old identity that believes possession depends upon tension. Open one finger, nothing disappears. Open another. The future does not fall away. The rope begins slipping from the hands. The hands discover they can rest. The desired state was never at the other end of the rope. It was in the release. The supported self does not need to pull support closer. The loved self does not drag love through force. The free self does not remain tied to the struggle for freedom. The fulfilled state may be found beneath the grasping. Let the rope fall. You do not need to hear it strike the floor. Perhaps you have already released enough to sleep. The question may remain with you, without requiring thought. If the matter were already settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? Let the deeper mind answer through what it gradually stops doing. Perhaps during the next sentence, the forehead stops anticipating. Perhaps the jaw stops preparing a reply. Perhaps the shoulders stop holding the morning in place. Perhaps the chest stops waiting for danger. Perhaps the hands stop gripping the unseen path. Perhaps the body discovers that settlement feels less like triumph and more like permission. You do not need to name the permission. You may receive it. The matter is not being solved through physical tension. The future is not being protected by wakefulness. The desired state is not maintained by constant attention. Nothing must be forced before sleep. Let the question become shorter. If it were settled, what could rest? The eyes could rest. The argument could rest. The clock could rest. The old story could rest. The need to know could rest. The one who has been trying so hard could rest. If it was settled, what could rest? Perhaps all you need is the answer. I could rest. Do not ask whether this rest proves fulfillment. Rest. Do not examine the depth. Rest. Do not compare it with another night. Rest. Do not decide whether the mind believes. Rest. The act itself becomes the response. The fulfilled state does not require you to remain awake to testify that it has been accepted. You may leave the courtroom. No more evidence tonight. No more witnesses. No final argument. The doors close gently. The lamps are lowered. The papers remain upon the table. Whatever requires attention may receive it in the proper hour. You do not need to judge the case before sleep. Outside the courthouse, the night is cool and still. The road is empty. No one pursues you. The old questions may remain within the building, speaking to one another. You are walking away, not toward a visible answer, toward rest. Perhaps you reach a quiet room. There is no need to tell anyone what has been decided. There is no audience. No declaration must be performed. You set down the coat. You sit. The matter may still exist in the visible world, but the inner trial is no longer required tonight. This is the doorway. Not a door opened by emotional force. A door revealed when the guard leaves. The guard was checking. The guard was convincing. The guard was preparing. The guard was watching. The guard was asking how. The guard was counting time. The guard was punishing every doubtful thought. The guard believed the door must remain protected, but the guard has grown tired. Let the guard rest. The door was never threatened. The state does not need a watchman. You may enter without ceremony. What is on the other side? Perhaps no great vision, only quiet. The quiet after no longer needing to know. The quiet after no longer asking another person to confirm your worth. The quiet after no longer rehearsing the unwanted future. The quiet after no longer measuring each thought. The quiet after no longer reaching. This quiet is not emptiness. It is completion without spectacle. You may have expected the answer to feel like receiving something. Perhaps tonight it feels like being released from something. Released from the inspection. Released from the argument. Released from the preparation. Released from the performance of uncertainty. Released from the duty to keep the desire alive through constant attention. Desire does not die when you stop worrying about it. A thing truly accepted becomes quieter. It descends from longing into identity. It no longer cries for recognition. It belongs. Perhaps you can feel the subtle difference between losing interest and gaining possession. When interest is lost, the desire feels empty. When possession is accepted, the desire feels quiet but full. You do not need to chase it because it has entered the inner house. You may think of it warmly, then turn towards sleep. Nothing is abandoned. The state is carried in the way effort has ceased. This is why absence can be a doorway. The absence of checking, the absence of argument, the absence of fear rehearsed in advance, the absence of compulsory vigilance. Within these absences, the fulfilled self has room to breathe. Let it breathe now. Not a dramatic breath, the ordinary breath of one who has nothing to prove in this moment. The air enters. Nothing is checked. The air leaves. Nothing is convinced. The next breath comes. No disappointment is prepared. The next leaves. No future is supervised. Breath after breath, the old necessities lose their office. Perhaps they will return tomorrow. Then you may ask the question again, not angrily. If this was settled, what would no longer be necessary now? Perhaps one act of worry becomes unnecessary in the morning. Perhaps one explanation becomes unnecessary in conversation. Perhaps one check becomes unnecessary in the afternoon. You do not need to maintain perfection throughout the day. You need only recognize the unnecessary labor and let it cease whenever awareness remembers. Each cessation is an entrance. Each release teaches the body another state. Each moment of non-participation removes rehearsal from doubt. Naturalness grows not only through what you repeatedly do, but through what you repeatedly stop doing. You stop preparing for rejection. You become more familiar with belonging. You stop rehearsing helplessness. You become more familiar with capability. You stop gripping the means. You become more familiar with support. You stop watching the prison. You become more familiar with freedom. The new state may first be known as the absence of the old one. This is enough. Do not demand a complete new identity immediately. A room may be refreshed simply by opening the windows and allowing stale air to leave. You need not fill it with music at once. Let it breathe. The old air moves out. The room becomes available. Tonight, the open window is the question. If the matter were already settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? The question does not tell you what to force. It reveals what may be released. The air moves. The curtains stir. The room changes without argument. No wall is attacked. No furniture is broken. Something unnecessary simply leaves. Perhaps doubt itself is not the first thing to leave. Perhaps the need to fear doubt leaves. This is even more important. Doubt may speak, but vigilance no longer follows. A question may arise, but the trial does not reopen. A sensation may pass through the body, but the sacred name remains free. The old character may appear upon the stage, but you do not complete the scene. The mind may look toward the road, but you remember the room. The outer matter may remain unfinished, but the inner necessity to remain unfinished with it begins to fade. This is the door opening. You need not see the hinges. You may notice only that the room has become less confined. Perhaps sleep is near. Let the question lose its full sentence. If it was settled, what could rest? What could stop? What could be released? No need to answer. The body may know. The forehead can stop anticipating. The eyes can stop searching. The jaw can stop convincing. The shoulders can stop carrying the bridge. The hands can stop pulling tomorrow closer. The chest can stop preparing for the old wound. The abdomen can stop treating uncertainty as danger. The legs can stop traveling inwardly toward an end already accepted in consciousness. The entire body may understand before the reasoning mind does. If it were settled, I would not need to hold myself like this. Then soften only where softening comes naturally. Do not order every muscle. One release may communicate with another. The jaw eases, and the throat receives permission. The shoulders lower, and the breath discovers space. The hands open, and the mind no longer needs to grasp. The forehead becomes still, and tomorrow loses its position at the bedside. No mechanical sequence, only a living message. Nothing must be forced now. If the matter were settled, I would not need to remain awake in order to protect it. Let this thought approach the deepest part of the night. You do not protect fulfillment by denying sleep. Sleep is not neglect. Sleep is the end of conscious interference for a time. The gardener leaves the field. The builder puts down the tool. The writer closes the book. The guard extinguishes the lamp. The process continues in forms the waking mind does not supervise. You may leave. Not life, not responsibility. The inner workshop. Leave it for the night. The tools may remain where they are. Nothing will be lost. The unfinished bridge does not collapse because the conscious builder sleeps. There are movements beyond your present sight. There are connections beyond present calculation. There are changes taking place in your relation to self. Let them occur without observation. Perhaps the old mind asks, but how will I know it is settled? Again, the question itself may reveal what remains unnecessary. The need to know immediately. If the matter were settled, would you continue asking how to know? Or would the absence of the question be enough? Do not chase certainty. Rest from chasing. Certainty may approach when pursuit has ended. A wild creature does not come near while the ground is struck and the air filled with noise. Sit quietly. Let the mind become a still field. Certainty may arrive as naturalness, or perhaps no distinct feeling arrives tonight. You are still permitted to rest. The door is not opened by perfect emotion. It is opened by the willingness to stop holding it shut through unnecessary effort. You may not feel the entire release. A single hinge may move. That is enough. The door is no longer sealed. The question has found the place where tension was living. It has shown you that fulfillment may be approached through subtraction, not more words, less argument, not more vigilance, less checking, not more excitement, less reaching, not more control, less resistance to the unseen, not more proof, less dependence upon proof. Let the teaching become simple. If it were settled, what could rest? I could rest. Let that be sufficient. I could rest, not forever, for this hour. I could rest, not because every fact has changed, because identity need not remain on trial. I could rest, not because I have forced certainty, because uncertainty does not require vigilance. I could rest, not because the bridge is visible, because the bridge does not need to be carried upon my shoulders. I could rest. The sentence may now become softer. I can rest. Softer. Rest. The question has opened the door. You do not need to stand in the doorway examining it. Cross through release. The old necessities may remain outside. Checking may remain outside. Convincing may remain outside. Preparing may remain outside. Watching may remain outside. Hurrying may remain outside. The need to perform fulfillment may remain outside. Enter without carrying them. Perhaps tomorrow you will pick up one old burden again. Then awareness will remember its weight. You will know that it can be set down. Once the body has tasted even a small interval without the burden can no longer claim to be inseparable from you. You have discovered the difference. There is you, and there is the unnecessary labor. There is being, and there is the activity learned from doubt. There is the desired state, and there is the strain you once believed necessary to reach it. They are not one. The strain may cease, being remains. The checking may cease, being remains. The argument may cease, being remains. The watchman may sleep, being remains. I am. No need to complete the name tonight. I am. No need to secure the answer. I am. No need to inspect the future. I am. No need to produce a great feeling. I am. And perhaps, in the quiet following these words, you discover that the doorway was never hidden behind some complicated method. It was concealed beneath the effort you believed you had to continue. The door appears when the unnecessary act ends. The handle was beneath the hand that kept gripping. The room was behind the body, leaning toward the road. The answer was near the place where the question could finally rest. Let the question rest now. No more asking what would disappear. Let one thing disappear naturally. Perhaps attention itself begins fading. Perhaps the sentences lose their edges. Perhaps the room becomes distant. Perhaps you no longer remember what matter brought you here. This forgetting may be a form of release. The matter need not remain at the center of consciousness throughout the night. You may lose the problem before gaining the visible answer. You may sleep without the old question. You may enter silence before the outer world has spoken. This silence is not defeat. It is the space from which another relation to life may emerge. The body is supported. The night is present. The future is not being examined. The old preparation may cease. The door is open. You may pass through without knowing the name of the room beyond it. No need to know. No need to see. No need to remain awake. If the matter were already settled, what would no longer be necessary inside me? Perhaps this, the need to hear another word. Then let my voice become distant. The meaning may remain without language. The question may fade. The doorway may remain open. You may rest beyond checking, beyond convincing, beyond preparation, beyond vigilance, beyond the identity that believed tension kept the future alive. Nothing must be held. Nothing must be proven. Nothing must be watched. The matter may rest outside conscious thought. The body may rest inside the night, and you may discover, quietly, that fulfillment did not first enter as something added to you, but as the gentle ending of everything within you that no longer needed to continue.